Check, mic check. Yep, there we go.
Oh, so you see the little blip and you know it's working.
Yeah, well, you see the blip, and then you've got your EQ meters going on up here.
Okay.
So this shows you pretty much how loud it's picking up.
Okay. So we want to stay in the green.
No, preferably, yeah, but if it jumps up a little bit, it's not a big deal. I have a lot of filters and stuff that I put on afterwards that kind of level things out. And
the post-processing.
Yeah.
You like that part of the process?
I do.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's another reason why I really wanted to get into this, because I've always been an audio nerd. So I wanted to learn more about it and audio production, stuff like that. So
yeah. Once upon a time, I did a little video / audio, like mixing, making kind of family movies, so to speak. You know, so that I understand what you're talking about. I can't remember the program I used, but I enjoyed it. You know, it can be meticulous. You know, trying to match or sync certain things together, trying to edit. Gave me an appreciation for those that, you know, do it professionally. That's for sure. Yeah.
At one point, I wanted to do a recreation of you remember in Christmas Vacation, the scene where he's trapped in the attic, and then he puts on like all of his old, you know, mom's clothes or whatever, and like he's watching all the old film videos of you know, family stuff, and then falls through the ceiling. His wife comes home and opens the stairs and he falls down.
Yeah,
I wanted to recreate that at one point when we lived in the old house in Kellogg, and never got around to it.
Do you have an attic here?
Yeah, actually. I don't have the stairs, but you can fake it. Yeah.
It's interesting that you mentioned attic, because one of the things I was thinking about is the title of your podcast, Guys in a Garage, right? And if you were to explain the concept of a garage to, say, someone who lived in Shantytown, India, right? Like, what is a garage? Well, as I observed, your garage meets what I would think is the traditional American definition, right? You have motor vehicles in there. You even had one that I remember currently being worked upon, right?
Yeah.
You had orderly tools either in drawers or hung from the wall. That is what I think most people would picture when they picture a garage, right? For me, not ever being handy, right? And I think it's funny being on the Guys in the Garage podcast. Like, I'm probably, of all the people you've interviewed, the one that's most likely to not know the difference between wire cutters and bolt cutters, right? It's like you'd be like, JJ, hand me this tool, and I'd be like, I have no idea what this tool is, right? Because I'm not handy. I never was. So for me, a garage is more akin to an attic, which you just mentioned, where it's basically stores a bunch of stuff from the past.
Just a place to put your stuff?
A place to put your stuff, you know? I mean, now our garages do have motor vehicles in them. But in the past, it's just been used for a place to store my stuff from the past. Now it's kind of, now one of our garages, we have a small one in the front of the house. It does have a vehicle, but also has a lot of stuff in boxes that are just stuff from the past, you know? Stuff, because when we used to live in one place, I used to have a man cave back in the days when I followed sports, you know, a topic that you and Dante talked about, Tom Brady, which is a topic in and of to itself. I don't know when you guys talked about him. You didn't mention, maybe it didn't happen until after you guys had the conversation, but to add insult to injury, Tom Brady is now one of the people mentioned in a lawsuit against
FTX.
Yeah, so you probably read that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I wouldn't say poor guy, but poor in the sense of his pride is disallowing him, you know, the opportunity to reflect and say, look, dude, you're already like the first head on the quarterback of Mount Everest, right? Like you're the first one.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, where are you going from here? You know? So I don't know. But at the same time, this is Tom Brady's a fascinating figure because he's following the tradition of other quarterbacks that you could argue are on that mountain. Joe Montana didn't end his career in San Francisco. He ended it in Kansas City, right?
Playing for the Chiefs.
Yeah. And Joe Namath didn't end his career with the Jets. He ended it with the Rams, right? So these people who were great in their prime, they didn't know when to exit.
Yeah.
Right? They had a hard time of exiting.
Well, when you're really good at something, I mean, it's hard to give it up. Especially when you know you're really good at it.
It's hard to go out on top. That's why, as much as I hate Elway, like I have to give him props for like just going out when he just like, after he like hoisted the trophy, And I only hate Elway because I'm a Raiders fan, and and
they beat Seattle today.
I saw that. Yeah. I happened to see that, which was fascinating.
My friends were pretty pissed.
Yeah, well, it was fascinating because it brought me back to the time when those two teams were in the same division, right? They were both in the AFC West. They played all the time. So it's like, I used to have a lot more hatred for the Seahawks than I do now, because now it's like, who cares? But yeah, it was kind of fascinating. Anyways, Tom Brady, I think, is also a manifestation of what the media and maybe Americans in general love to see, right? Love to be pumped up and torn down. You need the tear down. They want this tear down, right? They did it to Tiger Woods. There's many sports figures that have been built up only to be torn down, and Tom Brady is he's being torn down now.
Yeah.
But as you and Dante mentioned, the market will ultimately speak for him and for the sport itself, right? The market is going to say, at this point, based on these numbers with this team, it's more wise for us to put in the rookie or to put in the backup guy than put in you.
Right.
So the market's going to tell him when to retire.
Yeah. And that's what they did with Russell. And, as soon as he went to the Broncos, instead of bringing somebody else on, they put Geno in, which, personally, I think was a great choice. Because he already proved himself as a backup. Every time that they put him in, he did well. At least I thought anyway, in my opinion.
The numbers, I don't think it's a matter of opinion. I think the numbers bear that out, right?
Yeah. Yeah, he came in after Russell took the move. And, Geno, he's been doing a great job. I think he's been killing it. I think there's other... the Seahawks this season, I don't think have been doing all that great. But I don't think it's necessarily any one thing. They're a team. There's always going to be a lot of different factors that are going into it. I think maybe Pete Carroll has had his time in the sun as well. That's just me.
I'm sure some USC Trojan fans would agree with you too.
Yeah, probably, right?
SC's having a great year. That was another great game. Them and the Trojans this last weekend. I don't follow any of it now. Maybe I'll glance at a score kind of just to be nostalgic for like the days when I did follow it avidly.
Yeah.
And I noticed that the SC UCLA game was quite a nail biter, and it was pretty good. So anyone who went to that was probably pretty excited. But in general now it's like sports are just something I've kind of put to the side. But yeah, it definitely was in the addiction category once upon a time.
Yeah, well, and I haven't been able to keep up on football as much as I would like to anymore anyway, like with the podcasts and stuff going on.
Sure.
It takes a lot of time.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
I'm learning a lot every day and figuring out how to do things better and more efficiently and stuff like that. But man, it takes a lot of time. Like just today, before you came, I had to finish up a couple of things from Tim's episode, and then I only had a small amount of time, like a small window, so I'm just checking the highlights and stuff on the NFL app, and my friends, my brothers are all talking about it, just texting back and forth to our little group chat and talking shit.
Right. I walked into the game when it was just towards the end of the fourth quarter, and there was this play that was under review, whether or not it's a reception or not, and I'm sure your brother-in-law were texting about that. It was like overturned. It would look like a reception, but then they overturned it, called it an incompletion, so that favored the Raiders.
That's probably the one they were bitching about.
That was that. I'm sure that was, because that took forever. Like I just turned it on. I'm like, what? Why is this taking so long?
Yeah.
They should have a decision by now. That's the thing about football too, right? You just kind of alluded to it. It's like you can talk about condensed version. You can condense, 3 hours of your life into basically 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Right. And so once upon a time, I missed I can't remember what game it was, the Raiders versus, I want to say the Saints or something. And I missed it. And I was like, okay, let me go to YouTube. And YouTube had an 8-minute summary of all the scoring plays and long plays that took place. So in 8 minutes, I basically watched all the important stuff of the game. All the commercials are out. All the huddles are out. All the other nonsense is out.
Yeah. Just a quick catch up on everything.
Because if you can do the math, the majority of football is actually just rest. right?
Well, yeah.
It's the
all the commercial breaks, all of the, the huddles, the timeouts, everything. I mean, every play only lasts anywhere between, excuse me, anywhere between maybe like 6 to 8 seconds.
Exactly.
So, I mean, the rest of that time, where is that going? That's the clock running out between plays.
Right. You're just watching them, saunder back to the huddle and substitutions and.
Yeah. On top of all the damn commercials, which, I mean, so I have NFL Plus subscription.
Oh, okay.
Which I love because I can't watch the live games because we don't have cable, and you have to have a cable provider to put into the app in order to watch live local games and stuff. So that kind of sucks. But the good thing about it is I can watch any game as soon as it ends on TV. I can watch any game, a replay of it. I can watch a full replay, and then within 45 minutes or an hour or something, I can watch a condensed version of the game, which only just goes play by play. It skips all the commercials. It skips like any of the talking announcers and everything, and it just plays every single play of the game. And so you can condense an entire game into 45 minutes, every single one, maybe a little longer if there's overtime. And then within the next day, you can watch the full game with no commercials. They take them out by that time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's pretty rad because it allows me to watch whatever game I want, even, out of region games. Yeah, out of region games. And then any Monday Night Football, which is, if it's on ESPN, usually you can't watch it. Yeah. So it's pretty rad. But that's pretty much the only way that I can get my football fix within the time that I have. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm sitting here plugging NFL Plus, but it's awesome.
Well, I mean, I don't know if you're plugging, you're just telling you how it works for you, right? So as we mature, we have other stuff to do. You're doing podcasting now. It's like you don't have 3 hours.
Yeah.
You might have 45 minutes. You don't have 3 hours anymore, right? Like the 3 hours, no, I have other stuff to do.
Yeah, and they do like an audio. They do an audio stream of the games too. Like, so the ones that are out of network, you can listen to them live. You can't watch them, but you can listen. But you can listen to the audio from any game too, like at any time. So a lot of times while I'm at work, if I'm just sitting at my desk punching numbers, I can listen to the game and at least hear what's going on and stuff. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I have, I know you're not plugging, but I have Sirius XM. So it's like they have all the NFL games too. And so, I'm
on Sirius XM now.
And I'm actually biased towards audio because once upon a time, I think what my fantasy was to be like a broadcaster, right? So I grew up in the shadow and under the tutelage of Vin Scully, arguably the greatest baseball broadcaster of all time, right? And so he made me think like that may have inspired my career in a way because you're basically translating to someone who's kind of blind, right? So they can't see with the action.
Right.
So you are verbally converting everything that you see into words so that person can kind of imagine what you're seeing.
Yeah.
So if you ever, just take a moment to listen to an audio broadcast of any game, you're going to notice that these guys are so good, right? For the most part, they're so good at being able to describe what they're seeing. Because the guys that are on TV, they probably do get paid much more to do that, but they don't really have to do a lot. They basically, they're telling you what you just saw.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right. They don't have to follow quite as much because you're seeing it live while they're talking. But then you have the broadcast announcer that's they literally have to describe everything that's going on the radio like in real time. I mean, that takes a lot of thought process.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so, I mean, especially when it comes to baseball, I mean, again, I'm biased because that's like the last sport that I've kind of like given up or slowly giving up. I just listened to a baseball game and just like these audio announcers, even like the teams that I hate, like the Giants, like Johnny Miller is just he's such a great announcer. It's just like, and he has an enthusiasm for like, it's a fastball, foul ball, like over like over the third base dugout and into the third row. And so it's like, okay, you can imagine that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. You can see the picture in your mind of what's going on.
You're on TV. It's like foul, strike two. It's like,
yeah,
they don't have to say much.
And I'm not a fan of baseball on TV at all. I hate watching it on TV. I'll fall asleep, dude. But if I love going to a game. I haven't been to one in years and years and years, but going to a baseball game and getting a hot dog and a beer and just sitting and watching a game play live. It's a totally different thing. I love that. And now that you mention it, like if I had to use my brain a little bit more and actually just listening to a game on the radio or something, like that may be the only other way other than being there that I could enjoy it, because I have to use my brain and try to imagine it.
And you'd be amazed at how good these guys are, these broadcasters. It's funny, the last game I went to, because to get a little bit of a fix, it's the single A Spokane Indians, right? Not far away. And we went, and the one game that I went to this year, happened to be, I didn't realize it at the time, but I was, with our daughter, and, she knows that baseball is kind of a nostalgic thing for me. It's the one thing that'll easily, quickly connect me to my youth. So, it'll bring me back to when I was young, the kids on the street who taught me the game, because my dad wasn't athletic at all. So I had to learn from like the kids in the neighborhood.
I still have never been to an Indians game. I've been wanting to go to one forever.
It's fun.
I never have. We should should get some of the guys together and see if we can all go.
Absolutely.
That'd be fun as hell.
So economical. It's just
it's what, like a ticket is $6 or something?
Nothing. Yes. Yeah. You could have like the best seats for like $20, and it's like and it's still the baseball experience. And minor league clubs, to get the people in the door, they really do all these, like the T-shirt shooting into the crowd, and whatever type of entertainment. You've probably seen even in pro sports, like the Pittsburgh Pirates will have these races with the guys dressed up in these different costumes, and they're running like on the field. Just like the dorkiest things, but it's still entertaining.
Yeah, we went to the Kootenai County Fairgrounds for the the fair.
Yeah,
Kootenai County Fair this year, and man, it's been so long since I've been to like some kind of a live event. But a friend of my wife's gave her like free tickets to the monster truck show that they had there. And so that's mainly why we went. But we took the kids too, so they could go run around and ride the rides and stuff. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. But it's such a small place, they couldn't really do like a whole lot. I mean, they got a little bit crazy, but the truck's that big, it's hard to do anything fun and really be safe. So it was pretty toned down. But they did that. They ran around with the air powered gun, shooting the T-shirts at everybody and stuff. That was pretty awesome.
Yeah. See, so that would be one of my things on like Santa's Christmas list, because right now we've reached a certain point where people want something during the year, they just get it, right? So it's not like we're waiting until December to like exchange it with each other. So it's like really hard to shop for Christmas. But for me, what you just mentioned, it would be at the top of like my list, like some type of experience, right? So I've never been to a concert in Spokane. So you've mentioned like you went to Guar. You've probably been to many concerts in Spokane.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I've never been to a concert in Spokane. So I know my wife wouldn't be crazy about going to Spokane for a concert, but it'd be like, that would be a great gift for me. It's just like look up a schedule, find a group that maybe we would enjoy. We don't even have to know them that well. And like, a couple concert tickets. Because like a live event, like you mentioned, like that is becoming more special in today's modern era, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's like everyone's just like, stay at home, stay safe.
Yeah, well, ever since, the COVID lockdowns and everything, all of that crap, you never know what you have until it's gone, right? So now that we're kind of freeing up more and going out and doing stuff and shows are coming back, I mean, me and everybody are like, fuck yeah, I want to go see a show. Who's coming? Sweet. We're on it.
Exactly. And at this point, you don't even care what the show's about. You just it's more the experience than it is the talent itself.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, well, and I mean, it's like that with a lot of stuff. Like my wife, she doesn't listen to Guar. She can't stand their music. She's not big into like heavy metal and stuff.
Right.
She's more of a, country and a little bit of classic rock and stuff like that. But I'd been going to see Guar for years because they come through usually every couple of years. They'll come through same time, November, they roll through, or October. And so every time I haven't missed one of their shows, I don't think, in the last 13 years. And I finally convinced her to go with me one time. I was like, look, just come on. It'll be a lot of fun. You'll enjoy it. And she went, and she's like, she loves the mosh pit. Like she will go into a mosh pit and throw hands and get crazy. Me, I'm usually pushing my way towards the front because I want to be up close.
Yes.
And so we went that one time, and that's exactly what happened. She was like, "Oh my God, this is so rad." And she disappeared into the mosh pit, and I'm up like 2 people from the front and just looking over my shoulder every once in a while. And I see her going by, throwing her hands in the air. Ah! I'm like, yeah, she's fine.
Yeah, she's having a great time.
And now she goes with me every time because it's fun, man.
Uh-huh. Yeah, when you say Gwar, I think Beavis and Butt-head.
Oh, yeah.
That's the first time I ever heard of them.
Yeah.
And then I looked up some of their videos. I'm like, wow, this is different.
Oh, yeah.
This is like Halloween on steroids.
Yeah, that's one of the first times I ever saw Beavis and Butt-head too, or saw Gwar was on Beavis and Butt-head because, you know, it was like one of their favorite things.
So there you go. You're looking it up.
Yeah, I'm going to look it up because that's actually a great episode where they...
Beavis and Butt-head with Gwar. I told you how I called in sick the day that their movie came out, the first movie.
Yeah.
Just so I could be the first one to see it in a matinee.
Yeah, Beavis and Butt-head Do America.
Do America, yeah.
Yeah.
There they are.
Whoa, Gwar has horns now? Yeah. They taught the sex slaves to play horns. It's like Balzac told him, throwing blood and urine in the audience isn't enough. You guys need to learn to play something. Yeah, really. I heard that one time this kid had a seizure at a Gwar concert, and that singer dude told everybody not to help him. Yeah, really? Yeah. Oh, it's happening.
Oh,
Sarungus would want it that way.
Yeah, I love Beavis and Butt-head.
Oh, yeah. Just classic. Mike Judge. Just brilliant.
Dude, he is brilliant. I've seen him on David Letterman. I've seen him on Conan. I think, he was on Joe Rogan.
Really?
Yeah, so he did an episode of the Rogan Experience, and he talked a lot about first getting his cartoons, his one-offs and stuff on there, and the whole how Beavis and Butt-head got on to MTV, and it just started out as, I think he was talking about it as just one of the many things that he drew that was kind of random and submitted, and somehow that got picked for the one-off cartoon show they were doing, where they were just showing individual artist stuff between music videos or between shows and stuff. I wish I could remember the name of it.
It was probably the least likely thing he was expecting would be picked, right?
I think so, yeah.
So it's I'm just keep throwing spaghetti at the wall, see what sticks.
Yeah,
and
pretty
here
much.
it is, Beavis and Butt-head, and now it's boom.
Yeah, and it got picked and it got put on, and then instant, ratings. Just everybody loved it, and so they came back and they were like, "Do you have any more?"
Yeah,
and he goes into detail about that whole thing, and it's interesting how that worked out, and he managed to kind of save himself from getting screwed over a little bit.
I think it's similar to Matt Groening with The Simpsons, right? So when I remember in these throwaway papers that I don't know what they were called, L.A. Weekly or Baltimore, Daily, they'd have these, as I'm sure they have in around these parts. You go into a coffee shop and there's a free newspaper thing. Most of it's advertisement, right? But they'll have a cartoon or a crossword puzzle in there. And so the cartoon that they had was Life is Hell, right? So we had I don't know if you remember those Matt Groening ones where he had the rabbit ears, and they're always doing it was an old fashioned type of cartoon with box
sounds
by
familiar.
box. Yeah. So he came out with books later called Love is Hell and Life is Hell and Work is Hell and all this stuff, and there would all be this rabbit. So that was what he did originally, and then he did The Simpsons, right? And The Simpsons showed up on the Tracy Ullman show. And what I thought was brilliant, Tracy Ullman being, I'm not a huge fan, but I can recognize talent, right? Her talent is she's extremely talented.
Right.
I think when she got an Emmy, she did this remote acceptance speech where she was well, hopefully one day I can get a cameo appearance on The Simpsons. And this is before The Simpsons became what they are now.
Right.
Right.
Before they were huge.
But she knew because they just had 1 minute or 2 minutes on her show, her variety show, on the weekend. And then they became her show's canceled, and they became the longest running TV show in history or something. They're going on 30 years or something crazy.
Yeah, something like that. It's been a hell of a long time.
Yeah. I used to watch it religiously to the point where before the era of, modern technology, before even DVD recording, I used to put in the old VHSs and tape it.
Yeah.
And my ex-fiance would be like, what are you doing? I'm like, these episodes are going to be, important. They're going to be classics someday. So,
We had that too. We had like 1 or 2 VHS tapes because my mom was always big into The Simpsons. And so she had a tape that if she was going to miss it, she would put that tape in and then record it, but she never recorded over anything. So we had like 2 or 3 of these tapes that she just kept adding episodes onto every time, because she didn't want to miss it.
Yep.
And the one that I remember the most was where they had it was Marge and Homer went, I think it was their anniversary or something. And so they went just on a little trip to stay at a hotel and, have a nice time. And so they called the Rubber Baby Buggy Bumpers babysitting service.
Yep.
And had the babysitter come over, and she turned out to be like a thief. And
yep, the voice of Penny Marshall. Penny Marshall did the voice.
That's right. It was Penny Marshall.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I know. I remember that one very well. She
Yeah.
told me the Bots or something like that was the name of the character.
Yeah,
like
Mrs. Bots.
Yes.
Yep.
It was fantastic.
Yeah, it was a great one.
Yeah. Brilliant show. I mean, I watched it early on when our daughter was young, and it's because it can layer the humor, right? So the kid can see the slapstick part is funny, and the adult can be like these literary references that they're giving that are just totally, Homer's just being a total doofus and he's just hysterical. Yeah. And I used to enjoy watching that show with my old med school roommate. It was just totally fun. And that's just a great show. I don't know what happened, but again, it's like time, like the NFL. I just don't have time to watch it all the time. And so I don't know what season it was, but I've kind of left them by the wayside, years ago. I mean, I'm not adverse. I'm not against like watching something that they put out, but I've seen the Simpsons movie enough times, I enjoyed that.
I've only seen that in parts and bits and pieces. I don't think I've ever actually watched the whole thing yet.
Yeah, it's not as good as like any particular season, but it's still pretty good. It still kind of holds its own.
Well, the Simpsons it's an odd show because the Simpsons is to, like predicting the future in culture and society, as Star Trek has always been to predicting technology.
Fascinating.
You know what I mean?
Good point. I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, because Star Trek, everything that they've always developed in the show, and especially in TNG, I think TNG is when it kind of was even more pronounced. They had the pads that they were always writing on and all that stuff, and now we have iPads and we have iPhones and we carry all this crap around in our pockets and communication devices and stuff. So that's always interested me how almost everything so far that happened on that show, or that they had on that show, has like come to fruition, save for holo technology and all that stuff.
Which is probably on the way.
Right, and the Simpsons has always been the same with everything else. Like, they had the one episode that joked about Trump becoming president. Sure enough, Trump becomes president. Oh yeah, and it happens all the time.
Oh yeah. So then that makes you wonder, like, what do you feel about predictive programming? Do you feel like that's real? Is that really what's going on? That kind of like
maybe kind of like a manifest destiny type of deal,
or they're just like letting you know, like, okay, so there's been power outages in Texas, so then they keep telling you power outages on the news, power outages. So when again, a power outage happens and it's like a prolonged period of time, it's like, oh, I was kind of expecting this because they kind of prepped me for it.
Yeah.
Right. So to your point about Trump being president, it's like, oh, Trump's going to be president. Oh, that sounds funny. But you say it enough times and then Trump is president. You're like, oh, I kind of am not that shocked because I've been kind of primed to it. Right.
Yeah. I saw The Simpsons. It's fine.
Yeah. It's like, it's not beyond, comprehension because it's already been put into my mind as an idea.
Yeah. So you brought up, we were talking before you came. Yeah.
Yes.
So when I was talking to Dante and I brought up that episode of,
I knew exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. And man, I couldn't think of whether it was Amazing Stories or the Twilight Zone, because I've seen so many of them. I get them mixed up.
Yeah. I personally have never even heard of Amazing Stories, so I'm going to have to go check
really?
that out.
Yeah. Oh dude, that's great. You got to check that out. And again, I can't remember if I'm pretty sure it's Amazing Stories. There's one episode that scared the living shit out of me when I was a kid. And this guy, I think he's a writer. And so like he writes like horror stories and stuff, I think. Again, I'm probably butchering this just like I did
That's all right.
Other episode.
It's no butchering. You're remembering what you remember.
So he's a writer of some sort, and he starts having this issue where every time he looks in a mirror, he sees this figure behind him. And then, of course, he turns around and he looks and there's nothing there. But every time he looks in the mirror, the figure is closer than it was the last time. And so, like, he just starts going crazy and he's losing his damn mind, and his wife or girlfriend or whatever she is, you know, she thinks he's crazy, but she's trying to help him, and she covers the whole house, like all the mirrors, because his house for some reason is full of mirrors. I don't know if that's an 80s thing or what, but she covers all the mirrors in the house. And at one point, I think what happened was they get into an argument, and he like hits his fist against a wall or something, and the blanket falls off of the mirror that's next to him, and he looks, and that figure is finally like right there and grabs him through the mirror, and he turns into that crazy figure and then jumps out the window. It's nuts. It made me hate mirrors for a long time when I was a kid.
That's very interesting, because you're making me think of the Jewish tradition when someone dies to what they say, sit Shiva, right? So have you heard of sit Shiva? So one of the things about sitting Shiva, which I can't remember the period of time. I believe it's a week, and perhaps it's longer. 8 days seems to be like a popular number in, you know, Jewish tradition. But they cover the mirrors. So if you were to go to someone's house, and I think for the most part, they would like family, loved ones to just join them in their grieving. But during this period of time, all the mirrors are covered. So
why? That's
part of the tradition. Now, I don't know exactly the reason why. I think it's I could be way off here. Could promote humility in terms of like, you're not looking at your own reflection. You're not thinking about yourself. When you look in the mirror, you're thinking about the deceased.
That makes sense.
I might be off on that. So I would have to look that up. But when you said cover the mirrors in this particular episode, I thought immediately of like Shiva, right? Covering the mirrors is the only other time that I thought that, you know.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so covering mirrors, Shiva.
I think so, yeah.
See, we got Google's right here. We can look this up.
I know.
Why Jewish mourners cover mirrors and sit on low stools.
Yeah, I didn't even know about the low stools part. So, yeah, you got it right there. You did mention to me that you thought one of the things you learned about podcasting is to use Google more.
Well, yeah, use the tools that you have at hand, man. Anytime you can look up something, well, especially something funny, but if you want to know for sure and not, you know, just talk out of your ass, look it up, right?
Covering mirrors.
Let's see, the word Shiva actually has different meanings in various cultures found all around the world. In Hebrew, it translates to 7, the number of days in which this structured mourning period takes place. Okay,
so it is 7.
Yeah. A community referred to as, what does that say?
Sitting.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sitting Shiva. Commonly referred to as sitting Shiva or attending this solemn event at a Shiva house. There are different observations according to certain Jewish communities and their beliefs, including burning a candle as a memorial or in remembrance of the recently departed, placing water outside the home for mourners to symbolically wash off any impurities associated with death or the cemetery. So probably like washing your feet or your shoes or something.
Yeah, that still, I think, takes place in serious like Jewish temples to this day.
Wearing a piece of torn clothing or a torn black ribbon as a symbol of the tear in the mourner's heart. Oh, that's cool. Refraining from participating in any type of pleasurable or uplifting activities. So no happiness or getting it on.
Yeah. Yeah, so it seems like the mirrors are the personal appearance.
So covering mirrors in the house of Shiva is a common practice for many people. During Shiva, mourners abstain from daily rituals such as shaving or the use of cosmetics, which emphasizes the belief that personal appearance is simply not important while grieving. Mirrors are also covered as a way to remind us the observation of Shiva is not about ourselves, but rather a time to concentrate on the deceased. The concept of vanity is shunned, as this is considered a time of self-reflection to concentrate on one's inner self and not outward appearances.
Yeah. So, I mean,
makes sense.
The word humility doesn't appear there as I said it, but it's somewhat related in terms of vanity, right?
Yeah. When sitting low, why they either sit on the floor, on pillows, low boxes, stools, small chairs. Yeah, which is probably just the same kind of thing to be.
Well, the word humility is there. This is an outward symbol of showing one's humility, grief, and the pain of the mourner.
Yeah. Yeah. So that all makes sense. And it's all just about, focusing on, the person who has passed and not being consumed by your own vanity and, thoughts about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of cool, actually.
Which is interesting because, faith aside, the reality that we know in this world is that the memorials are for the living and not the dead, right? The dead aren't there to appreciate it. There's no more energy flowing through the body.
Right.
But the bodies that there is energy flowing through the surviving loved ones, it's more for them, right?
Yeah.
So I would me personally, having some Irish blood in me, I'd prefer the wake and party type of situation.
Yeah.
If
so would I.
When I pass, is that people just have a blast, like to be drinking beers and doing shots and telling funny stories about like what they remember me as, not as like not wanting to look at themselves and sit a low stool and be all humble for a week and be all sad,
Yeah. Nick Swardson, a comedian, he has a great bit about when he dies, and I'm pretty sure it's Nick. He wants everybody to have a crazy party, in his honor. And then he's talking about having his body like put on strings and strapped to the ceiling. And then at some point, like his body just gets released and it comes down and it's all dancing around and like EDM music starts playing and fucking paper,
it's a marionette,
confetti and shit's just blowing everywhere. It's ooze, 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 and everybody's like, "What the fuck is going on? I thought he was dead."
Yeah. Well, it may be by the time we pass that they could do the hologram thing. And so we're all just like holograms and like we're pretending we're still alive and really freak people out.
That'd be rad.
Yeah.
Or even just to be able to put like some last words or a last message into some type of little device that you can set on your desk that does a little hologram of you.
Yes.
That'd be cool.
Yeah. So you're reminding me of something. So in the manosphere, one of the guys, he's a popular podcaster, Ryan, oh God, why is his last name escaping me now? He wrote the book Sovereignty. Oh, geez. He does the Order of Man podcast. So in his book Sovereignty, what he recommends, and I've started it, but I have not finished it. And that is the project, if you will, writing assignment to write your own eulogy.
Interesting.
And or write your own obituary if you wish. So it's like I've started it and I'm just like, oh, geez. And then that can serve as something, on a daily, weekly basis that you reflect upon, that you read, that motivates you, to live the life that you want to live. I mean, this is what's ultimately behind Guys in the Garage and your podcast, right? You are now, by doing this, living the life you want to live, that you're choosing to live.
Preferably.
Not the life that's really, you lived out of, I guess, choice to survive in the material world, right? To be, you matched up something that your knowledge and your skills are good enough for you to get compensated so you can pay to keep the lights on, right? And to live a relatively comfortable life, but it's not following the passion so that you can actually look in the mirror and say, I'm not working at all. I'm doing something that I like to do every single day. I get up excited about it. And so, that's the goal, right? The only guy that I knew like that was our former neighbor who was his sister was in my high school class. He graduated a couple years ahead of us. His job, and he was one of those guys that was like a nerd, never an athlete, but that's why sports can be so great, right? So people who couldn't throw a ball, 10 feet, can enjoy the sport as much as anyone else because there's a bunch of numbers making up new stats, right? Making up new excuses to like follow a player, making up fantasy leagues. This guy was the team historian for the LA Dodgers, right? So he would be on the local thing all the time because he knew that, in this date in 1955 is when Don Drysdale like threw a no-hitter or something like that, right? He knew all about the Dodgers history. And I remember talking because I would look and I'd see like, oh, he's in the driveway, he's leaving. Like, I'm going to just go out and like, shoot the breeze with them. And so he would be the one guy that I knew that's just like, I'm still looking for a job, right? Because like what he didn't consider work, So if everyone could have that type of life where you're basically, you don't you're getting compensated to do something that you don't even consider work because you enjoy it so
Right.
much, right?
Yeah, and that's important, because a lot of people, if not most people, they don't really like their job. They don't like what they do for a living.
No.
It's just maybe something that they're good at,
Yeah.
or they've been doing it so long that they got good at it, and they're just not really, they don't know what else they would do.
And you just think about it, how insane the world is. So they're going to spend.
Getting compensated to do something you hate every day.
And you're away from, and why do you want the compensation? You want the compensation to pay for the house that you just left for the compensation.
Yeah.
You're paying for something that you've basically left vacant.
Yeah.
For most of the day. You're going to return to it for a few hours to like rest. So
Yeah.
you can go back to the thing that you hate to pay for the place that you vacated, that you're leaving vacant. I mean, it's insane.
The compensation, though, is being compensated for that time of your life that you're giving up to go do this thing that you hate to do.
Right. So it's like, and that.
But how much better would it be to be compensated to spend your time that you would love to spend doing something that you want to do?
Absolutely. So, and that dovetails nicely to the clip that you wanted to go back to, because at the end of this, what does he see as the most valuable? He sees time, right?
Oh,
he
yeah,
embraces time.
Yeah.
Because you're actually kind of asking the question, time versus money.
Right. So the story that I was talking about when I was talking about with Dante is the one that before you came, we were texting and you brought it up to me because you thankfully remembered. And so it's from the Twilight Zone, and it's actually episode 8, I believe, in the first season. And it's called Time Enough at Last. And the actor is the awesome Burgess Meredith, who played Pop, the old guy on Grumpy Old Men. Fabulous actor, by the way. Mm-hmm. It's actually a damn shame that he passed away.
Yeah,
I wish I could have seen more stuff done by him in my lifetime.
He was Penguin and Batman in the old Batman.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, he
the
was
the original Batman series.
And then with Bruce Wayne, not Bruce Wayne. What's the name of the actor? Adam. Oh, I'm forgetting the name. The real cheesy like TV show. Like Burt Ward played Robin. How can I not remember like the guy who played Batman? I can't believe I'm having such a brain
that was
fart.
Adam. Geez, now I can't remember his damn name either.
It's contagious.
He plays the mayor on Family Guy.
Exactly.
He does the voice of him.
Yes.
Adam West.
West, thank you.
Adam West.
Bingo.
God, that guy is awesome too.
So Burgess Meredith, and of course I think he was nominated for Best Supporting Actor for Rocky for playing Mickey.
Yeah, that's right. He was his trainer.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Exactly. I'm gonna teach you how to eat lightning and crap thunder.
Yeah, exactly.
So anyway, I felt like I butchered the story of this episode. Like I got kind of the basic concept of it from what I remembered, but so what actually happens, and spoiler alert for anybody who doesn't want to know and would rather watch it, go ahead and watch it and like skip this part. But so what happens is he's a total book nerd and he just loves to read. And I had not seen this episode in a very long time until you brought it up, and I was like, shit, now I gotta go watch it again before JJ comes over. So I went back and I watched it, and just it re-highlighted to me how fantastic not only this one episode was, but how, as you said, how great the Twilight Zone was, and like ahead of its time.
Oh yeah,
it's so fucking good.
Oh yeah.
So he's a total bookworm, and he has this overbearing, controlling wife who won't let him read because she doesn't want his book nerdness or him reading, as she said, to take away from verbal time or something. Mm-hmm. Basically, she wants him to talk to her.
Yep.
Okay, sure, I get that, but I mean, there is a way to manage your time, right? I mean, you'd spend a little time, like an hour reading a book, and then go talk to your wife. And I mean, it comes down basically to her just probably feeling ignored and wanting his attention. And instead of him just being a man and saying, okay, I'm gonna go read my book for an hour, but then I'm gonna come out and we're gonna play a game and we're gonna sit down and we're gonna chit chat. Like, really, that's all you got to do. But instead, he's kind of a little bitch. And he just takes it from her.
Well, he had a greater attachment to fictitious characters in the pages of a book than he did to his own real life wife.
Yeah, true. Yeah, he was way a little bit too far into the fantasy than he was into real life and just being alive and into the now, right?
And you think about how genius this is, how this is like an evergreen, timeless episode, because now maybe it's not books that people are doing it with, but they're doing it with social media.
Well, yeah, they're definitely doing it with their Netflix. Cell phones. They're doing it with video games. I mean, the video game industry is billions and billions of dollars a year industry in
Yep.
it. And it's all so that people can forget about being alive and immerse themselves into something else. It's kind of ridiculous. If you go on to, anything, Amazon, Walmart.com, anything, and you look at stuff, you're looking for a chair, right? That same office chair, if somebody puts gaming, the word gaming in front of office chair, it's another $100-$200 premium,
Sure.
even though it's the same damn chair as the one you just looked at that just said office chair.
Yep.
It's so fucking stupid.
Yeah. So it would make me think, like, are we in a game? Is this life that we're playing? Is this essentially a game?
Ooh, so hold on to that thought. We can get to that. So anyway, he is the thing with his wife and all that stuff, he's just a total book nerd, bookworm. And he does work at a bank, and then, so he gets busted reading books while he's trying to work, and then his boss gets mad at him. And so he, like, the next day decides to go take his lunch and his book and go read in the bank vault because there's nobody there and nobody will bother him. So he goes into the bank vault and he sits down and he's reading his book. And then I think he just kind of nods off for a little bit, and he sees something about, the government's worried about a possible H-bomb threat or something on a newspaper that he had with him. And, within a few seconds, boom, and he gets, like, knocked out from the force that's going on, and everything's shaking. And so he comes out, however long later, comes out of the bank vault, and everything's destroyed. So basically we got nuked while he was on his lunch, and he only survived because he was in the bank vault. And so he, like, he spends a night out somewhere, and then he gets up the next day and he's walking around. He manages to find a pistol, and he's, like, just about to kill himself, and he realizes, he looks over and he sees public library on this pillar that's turned over. Holy shit, right? How fucking badass is that? Everything he's ever wanted. So now he's got all the time in the world. There's nobody to bother him. He doesn't have to work. He's got all the books he could ever want to read. And yeah, it's just
The problem is, unlike Dante, who could get LASIK and not have to wear these Coke bottle glasses.
Yeah, so he's got these glasses that are so fucking thick. Like, it reminds me of Trailer Park Boys. What's that guy's name? I can't remember his name.
With the Down syndrome?
I
can't remember his name
He's
either.
got the big ass giant glasses.
Yep.
And it looks like just fish eyes. They're so big.
Oh, yeah.
And that's how Burgess's eyes
You're
look.
definitely burning ants in the summer sun with those babies.
Yeah, if you look
They're
up, you're probably going to kill
magnifying
yourself and fry your brain. So, yeah, he's that's what he's saying, is he's finally got time and all of that, and then he breaks his glasses. And so this is like the clip at the end of that.
Yeah, that's
We'll just kind of skim through it. But.
yeah.
Weren't for the loneliness. They just weren't for the sameness. If they were just
So this is right when
something
after he
to
found the gun, and he's just
do.
basically trying to psych himself up to do it, I imagine.
Yeah. Well, he's in despair. He hasn't quite realized.
I'm sure I'll be forgiven for this,
Yeah.
the way things are. I know I'll be forgiven.
Just about to do it. God, those glasses. His eyes are so big. See, that's the other thing I thought of, though, is he doesn't stick the gun in his pocket and, like, take it with him. He just drops it. Right?
That's interesting.
So
Yeah, so what does that mean? He's suicide's out now?
yeah, pretty much. I mean, unless he can, blindly find a cliff to throw himself off of or something sharp.
He's decided to live.
Yeah.
Based on seeing
George Bernard Shaw,
public library.
poems by Browning, Shelley.
Like, at the end of this, that was one of the first things I thought of was, shit, he didn't take the gun with him. So now he just has to wander around blindly until he starves or, to death.
He can't kill himself anymore, yeah.
Yeah, or find some other way to off himself. That's probably going to be a lot more painful and slow.
So then it made me start to think, is this, like, is Rod Serling in a way like trying, actually portraying a person's definition of hell? Because this is actually like would be hell for this character, right?
Yeah.
It's like you actually are surrounded by all the stuff that you love, and yet you can't access any of it.
Yeah.
Because you're blind, essentially.
And the
Yeah.
year after.
Yeah, this is a little bit longer clip, I think, than the one I sent you, isn't it? Or maybe. Yeah, he's so happy to have all his books, right?
Yeah, he's so psyched, right?
Now, I'm wondering here, Because you mentioned.
I mean, I'm not really a book nerd either, but I'll tell you what, if it was the end of the world and I found that, I'd be pretty psyched too.
Yeah, I mean, he no longer cares that there's no human connection.
Yeah.
Right? So he's okay to be the last man on earth as long as he has the words of previous men.
The very best thing of all
Oh yeah, here's
is there's time now. There's all the time I need and all the time I want. Time. There's time enough at last.
so psyched.
So to me, it's like, okay, so what is that book? You can't really tell, right?
Yeah, it doesn't really show you.
So then...
And then bam.
Of course, this reminds me of my friend, like, who says that audio is everything. So that, like, you hear the music and you know that it's ominous already, right?
Yep.
Oh, so see, when I saw the clip, I didn't see any words that were in the pages of that book. I thought it was actually blank, like a journal. So I was like, that would be, like, weird, too.
Yeah.
That's not fair at all. There was time now. There was all the time I needed.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Like, his glasses break, and I'm like, man, that fucking sucks.
Yeah.
Like, he did have all this time now. Like, this is perfect for him, right? Because we've already established. Whoa.
So yeah, so that begs the question, like, what is time? And so in this case, like, in a second, right, in the one act of his glasses breaking, time went from his friend to the most beautiful, glorious, like, commodity, if you will, that he had in his life, to now being a curse.
Yeah.
Now he's cursed by time. Because now he's got all the time in the world to suffer.
Yeah, he can't do damn shit.
Right. Seconds before, he had all the time in the world to just be joyful and to be happy and to be in his books.
Yeah.
And to be living in the words of, like, other people's creativity. Now he's got all the time in the world to suffer, knowing that that's around him and he can't access any of it.
Yeah.
Right.
One, and just to think too, like, when his glasses first broke, the first thing I thought was, oh man, that sucks. Right. But then of course, the way my brain works, I go straight into, well, it's not even about the fact that he can't read his books now. Now he can't fend for himself because the camera was so fuzzy it was. I mean,
right.
If that's how he really sees, he can't see anything. Right. Not a damn thing. He probably can't see more than 1 inch in front of his face.
Sure.
So that means now he can't fend for himself. If there are any animals still alive, especially like wolves or bears or something, he's dead. They're gonna get him. Maybe a lion escaped from the zoo or some shit.
Right.
Like, he's dead. He can't find food. He's not going to find water.
Right.
I mean, what do you do? So now he literally just has to sit there and either waste away, starvation, dehydration, and just slowly die a horrible, awful death, or maybe go trudging around trying to find that gun, which he probably ain't going to find, or find some other way to slit his own throat or something.
Yeah. Right. So now he's faced with, like, an eternity where he's just going to be miserable. But I understand what you're saying. It's like visual impairment. When you're visually impaired, the least of your worries is whether or not you can read a book.
Yeah.
Like, you're thinking, like, dude, you can't live. Forget about reading a book.
Right. But
you need to live.
Yeah. That's just funny to me, is that's the whole premise of the end of that episode, is like, oh shit, now he can't read his books. He's got all the books in the world and he can't read them. But for me, my brain instantly goes to, well, fuck, how the hell is he going to eat?
Right. But moments before, he didn't even care about eating or living at all.
Yeah.
Right. Because he was alone. He didn't realize that he could spend theoretically eternity reading the books that he wanted to. He wasn't worried about it. So he would gladly have died. Right. So I don't think the character was worried about the things that, normally you or I would be concerned about for survival. Right, because now you're thinking survival instincts, being visually impaired and surviving.
Yeah, he didn't give a shit about any of that.
And it's fascinating because, I sometimes forget, talk about taking things for granted. I take for granted the visual sense so much, right? So when there's a power outage, like I just experienced in Bonners Ferry last Sunday, and I'm trying to navigate around the house with just the memory that I have of where things are, like how faulty my memory is. Right?
Yeah.
Just based on, so it's like, if I, heaven forbid, ever went blind, the time period it would take to adjust to where everything is, to be able to navigate the living room and the normal house layout would take me, I don't know, way longer than I think. Right? Because just with the power being out or with my eyes closed or it being dark, like, I don't remember things accurately where they are. Right? And I'm bumping into stuff all the time.
Yeah. That reminds me of an old joke or something that I heard about a lady who was pissed off at her husband. Maybe she found out he was cheating on her or something, and she turned off the breaker box in the house so none of the lights would turn on, and then rearranged all the furniture in the living room.
Mm-hmm.
So when he came home in the middle of the night, he tripped over everything.
Yeah, that's real funny. Yeah.
That's clever, though. My wife would do that.
Yeah, it is clever. But Twilight Zone in general, I thought, and they usually have Memorial Day, 4th of July. I don't know if they had a Thanksgiving. Well, we don't have cable either, but they used to have these marathons, and so they would show it all the time. And I think a lot of what Black Mirror in modern day, was inspired was probably by like Twilight Zone, because there's a lot of stuff that Rod Serling covered that was just like, amazing. What was the other thing that I?
Yeah, Black Mirror is great.
Yeah,
I think we watched that whole series, whatever is on Netflix or
yeah. Well,
the one about the robots that are chasing everybody.
I don't remember
the little dog type robots.
Okay,
I don't remember which season it was, but that one was crazy because you look at U.S. Robotics and the other company, I can't remember the name of it, but they have those already.
Yeah,
right. I mean, they're not as nearly as advanced, but it's just a matter of time before they will be.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure they're advanced enough they could probably kick butt. Like anyone they wanted to.
Yeah, well, there's several companies that make those quadruped robots, and they're all almost exactly the same. And then I think it's U.S. Robotics and another company that have vowed to not weaponize them. Mm-hmm. So they won't sell them to the military. They won't make apparatuses to mount guns on them and stuff. Mm-hmm. And they recently, within the last few months, they put out like a petition or something like that where they and several other companies got together and said, yeah, we will not sell our stuff for war. But then you have a handful of others, and China's already doing this too, where they're like, oh, fuck yeah, how can we put guns on these?
Yeah, of course.
So, I mean, you're not going to stop it. It's going to happen.
Absolutely, it'll happen. I mean, that's unfortunately the nature of human beings, They want to weaponize. Why is that, I don't know.
Any way to kill people easier, I guess.
Yeah, which makes you think that, okay, are we in this? Is this a video game that we're just basically living? It's like, is that part of the objective? Like, I don't necessarily want to kill anyone.
Oh yeah, yeah. You were bringing that up earlier, simulation theory.
Yeah, I'm not inclined to, hate my brother, so to speak. I don't want to, wish ill will or the race to stop weaponized robots. Yeah, I don't know. It's the race is going to be lost.
Oh, yeah. So this is from Vox.com.
Yeah, not long ago.
The race to stop weaponized robots, October 13th. A group of robot makers recently declared that they are against the weaponization of their robots.
That's fine. You can be against whatever you want to be against. It doesn't mean it's not going to happen. Right?
Yeah, well, they're calling on everybody to basically get on board with them and say, no, we're not going to do this. But you're not going to get everybody, man.
Yeah, it's
and just the way, I mean, you can buy blueprints or CAD files online now to 3D print a gun.
Indeed.
Right? Mm-hmm. So as technology gets better and better and better, stuff like that just becomes so much easier to procure.
Yep.
So, I mean, you can make robots at home, in your basement with a 3D printer if you got enough time to do it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, okay, maybe you stop a few companies from making weaponized robots, but what's to stop some guy in his basement with a 3D printer from building one on his own?
Absolutely nothing. In fact, you're just delaying the inevitable. Why don't you just market and sell like these weaponized robots and just get it over with?
Yeah. Well, the whole thing with gun control and everything else, they just want to get rid of all the guns. They don't want everybody to have them. Like, dude, you can't uninvent the fucking wheel.
Yeah. So, well, the other thing is that whole argument, and don't get me wrong, like I'm as big of a hypocrite as anyone else. I'm not trying to say like these people are hypocritical, because I'm hypocritical too.
No, we all are.
But it's hypocritical to say you're against guns and you want to confiscate all the guns when you know full well the only method that is going to successfully do that is using guns themselves.
Well,
How do you get a gun
Right.
from someone with a gun unless you have a gun? What are you going to give them, like a DVD of like Bowling for Columbine and trying to have like Michael Moore like persuade him the guns are bad? Like, no, you're going to need violence to get the gun from the person who's got the gun. That's the only, so you're not against guns. You're only for guns in the proper hands as you see fit. Now, the irony of this is that they see fit for the guns to be in the same hands as those people they want to defund.
Right.
Which absolutely makes no logical sense at all.
Right. So you want to defund the police,
Yes.
and you want the police to basically be nicer to people. Okay. I mean, sure, there's a lot of fucking corrupt cops out there, but they're not all bad. I mean, I don't know what the percentage is. Is it 50-50? Is it 70-30? Like what? I don't know. They definitely need better training, right? But I know cops that have talked, a little bit about this, and the training that they get, it's not enough, and it's not often enough, So you want to defund the police and take away the money that they use to, call it what you will. You want to talk about how all they do is they buy guns and they buy drones so they can spy on us and all this other shit. Yeah, okay, they do that. For sure, they do. But the problem is they also need to be using that money for more and more consistent training so that, it's muscle memory, right? If you don't use it, you can lose it. So if you're not doing it often enough, then you forget. So when you get into a shitty situation, if you haven't been through your training, consistently, or you haven't done it for a while, then you could end up in a bad spot on the side of a road or whatever, where, the first thing that you think of is your fight or flight response, where that gun comes out and you got to start pulling the trigger when maybe you didn't need to do that, and that's what it's about, is it's always that fight or flight that pops in. And I mean, in any given situation, if you've got the upper hand or you've got the bigger, better weapon, you're probably going to win, right? And that's what you're going to go for.
Yes, usually. I mean, so you're
defunding the police, taking away their ability to be better police. And then, yes, there maybe does need to be some kind of reform, maybe more mental health checks for all officers, to maybe try and catch the ones that aren't doing too good. But people lie. There's no way of stopping that.
So this reminds me, because you're taking me down a road that I thought about, when you interviewed Luke. And what I found fascinating is, he mentioned that he's friends with some anarchists and that he's a libertarian, that he's basically conceding that the one thing that he'll allow government to do to function as is to be the monopoly on violence, which I thought it's like hysterical. It's like you're willing to decentralize currency, like because you like cryptos, and you decentralize pretty much everything else. So my one perspective that I have, and this might sound surprising to you, is, okay, you want to defund the police? Give me my money back that I'm supposedly paying to help support their salaries, and allow me, right, through less taxes, to hire my own private company. Much like I hire like this ADT to secure my home, or, an insurance company to insure my property. Now I can give this money directly to Post-Fall Security. Post-Fall Security now is a private company. You think they want to suck? You think they want their guys to be poorly trained?
Right.
You think they want their guys to like not be familiar with the fight or flight circumstance?
Right.
Hell no. Because guess what? They're competing with Hayden. Because I happen to be in the Hayden Security Company's perimeter too. So now I have a choice. So now I have choices to make between my own protection. And it's a competitive thing, just like anything else, just like car insurance, right? So now because you allow me to keep my money, and because you defunded the police, now I have private police. And now I have them competing against each other to give me a better offer.
Yeah.
Like, we're going to protect you 24/7. We're going to have a guy, if you want a guy to knock on your front door to make sure everything's okay, like once a week, we can do that, right? Now it's like, okay, I'm paying for something to, like, what, the guy's going to draw my chalk outline and never find my killer? I mean, look at the clown show going down in Moscow. There's like a freaking, like, every day there's like another report. These guys, it was a drug house. Oh, it wasn't a drug house. Oh, the parents say they have all this DNA. Oh, this DNA is, if you read, like, keep up with these guys, like, the police are no closer to finding out what happened with those poor University of Idaho students than they were when it first happened. So it's like, if I had the ability as a parent to pay for a private company. I had a contract, right? And then these people are now subject to litigation should something go wrong. I paid you to fulfill the protection of my kid, for example, right? Almost like private secret security. But I have the money to do it because, of course, they didn't take the money from me.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know if this is making any sense. But
it kind of does, yeah.
My point is that I don't know where you decide to arbitrarily draw the line as to where private things are good, and then all of a sudden, for the public, we need a public entity to provide this.
Yeah.
So the famous libertarian argument is like, what about the roads? Like people will say like, well, you need a government because who's going to build the roads? Like roads are such amazingly complicated technology that if you had a business and I had a business and we wanted to do business together and there's a big pond, blocking us from getting from point A to point B, that you and I couldn't put our brains together and hire someone to build a bridge. Like we actually need the government. Believe me, bridge technology is exclusive domain of the government. Only we are bright enough to build this road, to build this bridge. It's like, no, it can be privatized too.
Yeah, everything can be privatized. When it comes to issues, though, of certain groups having power, and especially having power over others. So, I mean, I'm not an advocate. And I don't think Luke is either. And he even said, he's like, no, I'm not saying get rid of government, blah, blah, blah. No, I agree with that. Like, I think it's more about, there's so much corruption and there's so much overreach and there's so much over government. You know what I mean? There's just, there's so much of it. Like, dude, really? Every time somebody gets offended now or, some bad thing happens, somebody instantly stands up on their soapbox and has to say, oh, well, we need more laws against this and blah, blah, blah. We need to regulate this. Like, no, you fucking idiot. Maybe we just need to all come together as a group, as people, and decide, what we're going to allow and what we're not, and try to figure it out on our own for certain things, right? I mean, instead of creating just tons and tons of bullshit legislation for this, that, and the other thing that really doesn't need to be there.
Absolutely.
I think it's more about just getting back to what the government was originally for, what it was originally established for, but over time they have just taken it upon themselves to, every time they pass a bill for some small insignificant thing, they always put some other little shit into the wording that nobody understands unless you're, in Congress or a lawyer or something else. The normal people just don't really understand. And so we just gloss over it, because who's going to read a 2,000-page bill?
Well, as the former...
Or 5,000-page bill or more.
As the recently demoted Speaker of the House said, you have to pass the bill to find out what's in it. They never read it beforehand.
Yeah, that's stupid.
You only find out afterwards.
Yeah.
Right? So, yeah, I mean, I'm totally with you. There should be, but what you seem to be implying, correct me if I'm wrong, is more of a natural order, a natural law, like the people can... collaborate with each other, and they can do it on a community basis, right?
Yeah, to a point, yeah.
People in Post Falls, Idaho, don't need like Washington D.C. telling them what to do, right?
Yeah,
it's like you have no context of that.
More localized government. I mean, I think the government passing stuff down more to state level is definitely a step in the right direction. Say what you will about Roe v. Wade and everything else that's going on in the country right now. Okay, fine. It affects certain people. Certain other people don't care one way or the other. Fine. But I still think personally that it's better to have it at a state level on a lot of things than to have the U.S. government sticking their noses into every single thing that we do.
Absolutely. And to take that one step further.
And not everybody's going to be happy about it.
Of course not.
Because not everybody's going to get what they want.
When is everyone going to be happy?
Never.
Is there a point in history that you foresee that every single person will be happy?
Fucking it's never happened and it's never gonna. But that's what majority rule is about.
So equality and equity are then a myth. Can we conclude that?
Yeah.
There's never going to be an egalitarian system.
Yeah.
There's always going to be inequality, right? There's always going to be a Russ Albrecht who has a website called Silk Road, who's spending 2 life terms in prison, and there's always going to be a Sam Bankman fraud who basically money launders through Ukraine to the Democratic Party, who's going to be giving talks at like the New York Times event, right? So there's inequity right there, right?
Yeah, I was just listening to something recently about Russ and the whole Silk Road thing that was pretty interesting. There's a documentary somewhere, or maybe it's a docuseries, I don't know, but it's all about how that got set up, and supposedly he was never actually really that involved with it because he wasn't a coder. He didn't really know much about computers. He set it up kind of the same way that Bitcoin was set up, where it was more of just to bring community together and create a space for people to basically say, fuck big business, and we're just going to be a community and collaborate together. And yeah, setting it up on the quote unquote dark web was a way of keeping it more on the DL so that it would be fucked with less. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But then it supposedly what happened was you've got, all these, government, basically agent provocateurs that, and cops.
Sure.
That
the FBI infiltrators.
Yep. They infiltrate the thing. And then of course because in order to catch people, right, you want to get big business rolling through it. You want to be able to catch people red-handed. So it started out on Silk Road as just people maybe selling a little bit of weed and some mushrooms to each other. But then, of course, the FBI agents or whoever it was, the provocateurs, they get on there and they start trying to move huge amounts of coke and all this other stuff just to basically create a much bigger problem there than there actually was to begin with.
Right.
And according to his family, like Russ set it up, but he wasn't at his laptop every day, like, dealing with it. And what was it, Pirate, what was his handle?
Oh, I don't remember that.
It was Pirate Jack or something, I can't remember. But basically they were like, yeah, he was never really on it all that much. How could he be some $1 billion mastermind behind one of the the supposed worst online drug rings ever, when he really didn't do anything with it? He had friends who helped him set it up because they were programmers and they knew how to code. He didn't, supposedly. So it's just pretty much comes down to, from what this documentary thing or whatever it is says, he got the shit end of the stick. He got fucked over really hard for trying to do something good. Yeah. He was trying to bring people together and just open up a new market. Like, it's basically a kind of an online farmer's market on the DL.
Yep.
That, yeah, it did bring about some, unscrupulous figures, but I mean, you could have that happen in a real farmer's market.
Absolutely.
I mean, that it is possible.
Yeah. I mean, in the end, the deep state's message to all of us is just like, let that be a lesson to you.
Yeah.
Don't try and go out on your own. Go through big business.
Yep.
Because of course, big business is paying us.
Yeah. Right? Buy your shit at Walmart.
Right. Exactly. Because we're sponsored by Walmart. And Target and Amazon and all these other like big corporations, right, that have reached a certain level where they make so much money, not only they don't have to pay taxes, but they basically just pay us, right? So that's the whole thing, is the free. This is what I was thinking about too. So a lot of people that are Marxist, socialist, communist, whatever, they'll be like, oh, the reason why it's such a problem is because socialism's never really been tried. It's never really been truly tried. Like, these are all like,
truly tried.
Right.
Or shit. It's been tried several times.
But rare is the comment that someone says, well, capitalism's never been truly tried. Like, what are we doing with capitalism, right? It's crony capitalism, right? So Bezos is a billionaire, so he can obviously fund the judges, even the press, the Washington Post, right, to provide cover for him, right? So this is basically the merger of private and public. Right. I always thought it was fascinating. You, I'm sure, remember the time of the Tea Party, when people were mostly protesting the government. Right. They're basically, we're taxed enough already. Right. That's what T stood for. Yeah. And these Tea Party Republicans were out protesting the government and their overreach. And then on the other hand, you had these people going out and being Occupy Wall Street. These private companies, they're too powerful. And I'm thinking to myself, where do you draw the line between the two of them? Because they're in bed together, and they always have been, right? the rich private entities, the companies, are paying the government to give them protection, to allow them to write the laws to enable them to have these monopolies, right? And in return, you're going to get lots of our money. Very simple. And
and what you're talking about is lobbying, which I fucking hate, to be honest with you.
But that's the nature of what we're dealing with.
All that is legal bribery.
Yeah.
I think lobbying is one of the worst things that has ever happened to our government, and it's nothing new. It's been around forever. But for any any private entity, any large company, I mean, anybody who has, a foot one in the game, in some kind of sector of business or anything else that stands to make a lot of money, depending on how our government decides to vote.
Mm-hmm.
How is it legal for them to go in and say, so, Senator, if you make sure this vote passes this way, we'll kick a few dollars into your campaign next year, And it's so stupid because the way they get away with it is by donating, right? Quotes, donating to their campaign.
Mm-hmm.
Well, like, was it? I've seen something that talks about career politicians making a career out of running for president, like Bernie Sanders.
Sure.
Right? Because from what I know, and I could be talking out of my ass, but all that money that gets donated to their campaigns, they spend it on, advertisements, they spend it on, signs that go in your front yard, all of that crap, so that they can get their name out there and hopefully win your vote, right? But then at the end of it, whether they win or lose, whatever's left, it, I guess, is considered a salary of sorts, and they get to keep it. Yeah,
I mean, I was going to say, how do we even know like the full accounting and auditing of like where this money goes? We don't know. How does like someone like AOC representing a borough of New York go like from a bartender getting paid like what is the average congressman's salary, like $130,000?
Yeah.
How does she go from like $130,000? How long has she been in Congress? And now her like net worth is like what, $29 million?
Something.
Tell me how the math works on that.
Yeah.
Right. Because I don't see it unless there's something damn corrupt going on. Right?
Yeah, and that's exactly what I'm talking about. They get donations by these large entities to their campaigns, and then if they get to keep all of it at the end, whatever they don't spend, well, that's horseshit, because that just means that they're being bought, and they're doing it right in front of us.
Absolutely.
And nobody says a word about it.
They're just, and it's becoming more and more brazen, right? Mm-hmm. They're just right out in the open. It's just like, what are you going to do about it? You're not going to do anything about it, right? What are you going to do? You're going to go vote harder?
Yeah.
Right? And so then it's like, well, okay, well, let me ask you this. What do you think about like election integrity? Does this country have election integrity?
Fuck no, it doesn't.
Okay. So that's a funny thing too. I'm trying to set personalities aside and just look and just look at what, trying to use a little bit of logic, right?
Yeah.
So 2016, okay, this election was totally tainted, right? Because Russian interference. Let's just stipulate. Let's just say that's true, even though the New York Times has even come out and confessed that whole dossier was completely fabricated and complete nonsense, another deep state operation, right? Let's just say, okay, 2016, you showed that there was a problem that foreign subjects, whatever, other countries could influence the United States elections. Mm-hmm. Okay, let's just say that's true. 2020, 4 years later, the most secure and an election ever in history, with the greatest amount of election integrity, no questions to be asked. All of a sudden, in 4 years, we went from different countries able to infiltrate the United States' election to like now it's completely secure. So no one ever mentioned, well, who made it so secure? It must have been like the Trump administration that made it a priority as they're being investigated by Mueller and everyone, right? To like make sure that we have such secure elections, right? So now you're like, okay, these elections are totally secure, right? So it's like, you guys are just clowns. So it's like, why am I going to be brought into this whole thing that I know is designed, right, to divide, right? Yeah. You're mentioning earlier about collaboration in a way, like you seem to touch on it, like human beings like collaborating. And we collaborate like it's not out of our biology. I mean, we're not ants or bees. It's not like genetically programmed into us that we're going to get stuff done. We do it because there's something in it for us, right? Like, and we understand after experience that the division of labor is more efficient, that I'm going to get what I want out of this quicker, right, if I like collaborate with like someone else. But this seems to be a design of like breaking people apart so that they'll no longer collaborate. Yeah.
Well, and that's one of the biggest problems, I mean, with any system, whether it's capitalism, socialism, whatever, that people don't seem to realize is it's human nature to want to survive. Mm-hmm. It's human nature to want to have the most of whatever it is that you need or want, right?
Yeah.
And that is where greed comes from.
Yep.
Like it or not, greed is a part of everyone. You'll never get rid of it. And until we somehow can all come together and say, I have enough of what I need, here, you can have this or whatever, which I personally don't think is ever going to happen, but it might. I could be wrong. I lean more towards the side of caution, but
no, I wouldn't disagree with you, but then you get to the upper levels, and I'm talking about the predator, psychopathic like levels that are like who get controlling the world, and they have so much material wealth, right? That they're bored, right? That they need something more. And what is that? They need control over all the ants. Mm-hmm. They need to want to put us all into one thing, into one smart city where the refrigerator's telling, the shopping cart at the store, like how much milk you got and if you need another gallon, or like the heaters, you guys talked about smart cars on one of your episodes, right? So they can shut off the smart car. They can shut off the Tesla. Like, oh, you're outside of your radius,
right?
Because you're quarantined. You can't go any farther, right? And then get us all onto some type of central bank digital currency. Mm-hmm. They're playing with that, right? So they want us all on our phones to be able to make transactions, right? Which I've used Venmo, just like the other guy. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, the more I'm dependent on that, the more I'm susceptible to being like China, as you've discussed in the past, the social credit score.
Right.
They don't like something I posted on Facebook, boom, my account's closed and I can't access it.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and that's some of the greatest ways to control people in general is you take away their ability to move freely. So turning off people's Teslas because you don't like something that they said, mm-hmm. right? Being able to see everything that people are doing at all times and basically ostracize them to the entire society as a whole,
yep.
right? So you're looking at their social media and everything that they're posting, right? And at some point you're basically requiring them to be on social media. Like, you have to tell us everything that you're doing and post it all over so that we can all decide if you're the kind of person that we like, yep. and that you're doing things that we like and we're okay with.
Yep.
So that then you get your social credit system. So being able to say, okay, you can't get a bank loan because you said this one thing, that was, sure, it may have been a joke, but it was about the president and we don't like it.
Right.
So then what do? Like Bill Burr has that great joke about, oh, they shut his chip off.
Yeah.
Fuck that guy. Right? That's how they do it. They shut your chip off.
Well,
so you can't get in your Tesla and drive anywhere because they shut that off. You can't start a business or maybe even go to the grocery store and buy food because they shut your chip off. Mm-hmm. So what's next? What other forms of control are there?
Well, right now you mentioned lobbying. So who are some of the greatest lobbyers? The pharmaceutical company. So pharmaceutical companies lining up and they're like, look, you need to give this shot in every single arm, and you need to make sure that these people who don't get the shots can't travel, can't work,
yep.
right? Can't do this, can't go to the grocery store, can't go out to dinner.
So they pump us full of drugs to control our minds.
To make their billions, right? And who's funding it in the first place? Like, the taxpayers are funding it in the first place, and they have no liability. Mm-hmm. There's no downside for them.
Yeah. Yeah, it's horseshit, right? That they can basically, put into legislation or in a contract that, okay, well, we're going to make everybody go take this shot.
Right.
But if something goes wrong, they can't be held accountable.
Right. So where is the line for your autonomy? You want to talk about boundaries. Where's the boundaries? The boundary not like at my skin surface?
Right.
Like, do I not own like the skin and everything below that? Is that not mine, or is nothing mine?
Right.
You see it as everything is yours.
Yeah.
Right?
In a basic level, and I think it was, I want to say it was Doug Stanhope. He's a comedian. And one of the best things that I ever heard him say was that if you own nothing else in life, you own the meat that's packing your bones. It's yours.
Absolutely.
So if you want to go shoot heroin, you want to go jump off a fucking cliff, you want to go 100 miles an hour on a motorcycle, fucking do it, because it's yours to do with whatever the hell you want. Mm-hmm. Basically is what he said.
Yes. The only exception being is like not to use it to aggress against someone else.
Right. If what you're doing is fucking with someone else, and really doing something that could change their life,
yes,
then yeah, okay, maybe you should think about that.
Right. It's kind of like
But then that comes back to the same argument of everybody being offended everywhere by every stupid thing that you say or do or whatever else. They want to just be upset because they want to have something to be upset about.
Well, yeah, those people I just can't. How do you take them seriously? They're living in just a completely different universe where they are not these are the kids that like all got trophies, right? Last place, you get a trophy, you're the same as first place. So there's no distinguishing between them, right? So that's the only way that they can continue to, virtue signal. It's like, oh, I'm offended as you. Like, don't, I'm more offended than you. And there's this like weird hierarchy. Explain to me the hierarchy, like what? Because I don't even know. I can't keep up with it all. Because this whole being offended, I've just kind of like dismissed. Because when I get offended, I realize I'm out of integrity because I'm not owning. That means I'm not owning myself, right?
You're allowing something that somebody else did to affect your life.
Exactly.
Even if it really never would.
Absolutely. And I'm taking that control out of my hands and giving it to someone else.
Yep.
Now you're in control of like how I feel.
Yeah. Right? Now you're just playing victim and allowing what that person said to affect you when it really doesn't.
Right.
Because if you have any control of yourself at all and you know what they're saying is horseshit, you can just be like, okay, and walk away.
Right.
And it doesn't do anything. If somebody says something to you in the morning, that maybe is a little mean or whatever, like, and you're still pissed off about it later on when you're making dinner, you're the asshole.
Exactly. Right. And you made that decision to continue to be pissed off about it and take some of that control back. Like, why wouldn't you want to take some of that control back? I just don't understand that, right? So that's how I can't relate to these people that always want to be offended and like virtue signal. But what I was going to ask you is, I don't know where the hierarchy is on things. Because right now, the World Cup, which I don't really watch, I occasionally used to watch, like when it gets closer to the finals, maybe I'll watch it a little bit, but never been a big soccer fan. But it's being hosted in Qatar, right? An Arabic, Islamic country. And so one of the guys that would try to get in to watch the USA versus Wales, he was wearing an LBGT rainbow shirt and the security guard wouldn't let him in. Yeah. So now I'm wondering, like, okay, well, in America, I'm kind of confused. Like, what's of the higher rank on the offensive scale? Like, is this person like, is it better to be homophobic or is it better to be Islamophobic? Like, I'm not sure. So it's just like a whole bunch of nonsense, right?
There's been so many stories that I've seen coming out about the FIFA Cup this year. So many people getting offended over this, that, and the other thing. Like, oh, the guy couldn't wear his rainbow shirt. Oh, well, they banned all the alcohol. We can't get drunk while we watch the game and blah, blah, blah. You name it. Yeah. It's just one thing after another. And it's like, yeah, because you decided to have it in a Muslim country where they don't drink. They don't do alcohol. Yeah. So of course they banned it. What the fuck did you expect?
They don't even do hot dogs.
Yeah, because it's bacon. Pork.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you're gonna have it in a country that bans all of that stuff, because they're very much they're pretty much their whole legal system is based on their religion, right?
Yep, it's a theocracy.
Yeah. So if you're going to have an event like this in a country that is based that way, then hey, guess what? Like it or not, you got to get with the program.
Yeah.
Right. But the way that America has gotten right now is that we let anyone and everybody into our country, and we preach all of this tolerance and inclusion and everything else. And we have to cater to everybody. So when Muslims come over here and, they want to set up their own Sharia law and everything else, like in Chicago, I've read that they have certain zones in Chicago where they're not really cops, but they are basically religious police officers that walk around and they control the streets in those areas. Yep. And if you screw up anything that has to do with Sharia law, I don't know what they're doing, but whatever. And I'm not saying, I don't know. I don't want people to think that I want to be very clear. I don't want people to think that I'm saying, that I have any issue with Muslim people or anything like that. I don't.
That's clear to me.
I don't. But we are already a country that has our own legal system and we have our own way of doing things. This is our country. So my biggest problem with immigration is that if you're going to come to America, you came here for a reason. And that reason is that you want something better than where you're coming from. So if you're going to come here, then you need to, as everybody else needs to do, going to watch the FIFA Cup in Qatar, get with the fucking program.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that our legal system is perfect, because it certainly isn't. It is beyond fucked up and corrupt in its own right.
Yeah,
there are a lot of problems that we have.
Oh, indeed.
But it is what it is. So
Yeah, I mean,
asking people not to eat hot dogs or to, be at the beach in a bikini because you're Muslim and it offends you. Well, guess what? You're in America now where we eat hot dogs and we have chicks in bikinis. Yeah, go fuck yourself.
And as far as the World Cup, it's like, take it up with the freaking selection committee.
Yeah.
Like, they're the ones who like didn't have the foresight to see this possibility happening. Yeah. Right? How many Europeans like want to have a pint while they're like watching football? Plenty.
Yeah.
And so that's like, and you know what? I still have faith in the market. So like whatever happens, the ticket sales might be down, the viewership might be down this year, whatever. They'll learn their lesson. The market will bounce back. 3 years from now, it'll be like in a different country where you can have all this stuff. And if that's that important to the people that are paying into the system that want to watch, soccer and want to watch the World Cup, I think the market will bear it out. In terms of our country and what you mentioned in terms of like Sharia law, it's like, okay, as it applies to a household, that's okay. That might be the smallest form of local government. But once you start getting out into the streets, once you start getting beyond the doors and windows of your own property and you start imposing it upon people that just happen to be in the same geographical area, like, you definitely have a problem with that.
Yeah. And that's all I'm saying is if you're going to spend the money on plane tickets to go to Qatar to watch the FIFA Cup, you don't get to be pissed off that you can't have a beer and a hot dog. That's their territory, and they do things the way they do things, and you got to deal with it.
It's included with the price of admission, right? You need to know that ahead of time. In fact, why not just like save your money and be like, oh, we're not going to be able to get beer and hot dogs like this year. Like, let's just continue the account. We'll throw pennies into the jar for another 3 years and we'll go to whatever country is hosting it 3 years from now.
Yeah, wait until the next time it's hosted in Germany or something where you can have all the beer you want.
Exactly. So, I mean, in terms of, this goes a little bit back to, because I know you touched on it, and it's almost like you didn't want to touch it to be controversial, but you did say the word abortion, and so that to me is.
Well, I brought up Roe v. Wade. I didn't say abortion.
Roe v. Wade.
I mean, it goes into the same thing. Yeah.
I inferred abortion. So yeah, you are correct. You said Roe v. Wade. So my interpretation now, if you are someone, this is my understanding of it, and I'm not a lawyer, but if you're someone who has faith and believes and respects the Constitution of the United States, well, in that document, it's actually dealt with. And that is Article 10, right? So it's like, if it's not mentioned here, which Roe v. Wade, abortion's not mentioned in that document, but in Article 10 is like, it's left to the states or the people themselves. So that's why.
Well, I think that's why they pushed it back to the state.
And that's how it should have been. I think even my buddy who's a lawyer in Manhattan tells me that even Ruth Bader Ginsburg, when she was alive, agreed that the ruling was incorrect and that it should have been ruled as a 10th Amendment case.
Right.
That is much like gay marriage, much like legal marijuana, all these topics that aren't mentioned in the original founding document. Under Article 10, it's to the states or the people themselves. Mm-hmm. And so that's why I think the direction where we're going. And it's okay. You may feel differently about this, but it's okay by me that secession might be on the table, right? And so that eventually, and look at places in Washington and Oregon, they're voting about like they want to become part of Idaho.
I know, right?
Why they want to become part of Idaho? They want to be in a different country than Oregon.
Over half of Oregon wants to secede and become part of Idaho because they hate Oregon. Well, they hate Oregon's government and policies. So, I don't blame them.
Yeah, right. So that, and that makes perfect sense. And that also would help explain
well, and they were working on over half of Eastern Washington wanted to do the same thing.
And so you guys wonder, you native Idahoans, like you wonder like why real estate prices
wish I was native.
Were real estate prices going up so high? Why are so many people moving in? This is why, right? This is part of the reason why, because the priority of freedom in a place like Idaho is so much higher than in these other places you mentioned, Washington, Oregon, right. Of course, California.
But right? one could argue, though, that freedom is less abundant here, considering that when Roe v. Wade got pushed back to the states, Idaho instantly had an automatic fallback, where their automatic trigger where it basically outlawed all abortion in the state.
Right.
And that upset a lot of people, and with good measure. Yeah, you should be upset about that. Yes, a lot of this legal stuff should be handled at state level. I agree with that. Mm-hmm. I think there's way too much government overreach. There's way too much being put on the federal government, and that people are allowing the federal government to dip their hands into, when really they should just stay the hell out of it. But then when it comes down to that state level, it's the same thing. when you want to talk about freedom, I personally, I'm not big on abortion. I don't care who knows it, whatever. That's just my opinion. I've said this before. Everybody's got opinions, and they all stink.
Sure, right, exactly.
And we've probably, I think me and you actually touched on this before the last time you were here. But everything, it's the same argument with drugs. Drugs shouldn't be illegal, especially not weed, right? Abortion shouldn't be illegal. I don't agree with it. I'm not big on it, but who the hell am I to tell anybody what they can do with their own body? And if you want to argue about like, well, you're not doing it to your body, you're doing it to the body of that fetus that's inside of you, cool, have that argument. Have it all day long. You guys can hash that out, figure it out. Where that lands, that's on everybody else. But when it comes down again to the meat that's packing your bones, that's your body. You can do whatever the hell you want with it, right? Mm-hmm. You should be able to do that. Mm-hmm. Especially when it comes to, a woman who has, medical issues, and having that kid could kill her. Now, it's her decision whether or not she wants to go through with it and chance her life on giving life to another, or to say, no, I can try again some other time, maybe after I'm more medically stable. Mm-hmm. That's up to her, and it's not up to anybody, especially not me, a guy who's never had a kid and will never have that ability to say whether or not she should have that right to make that choice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean...
So whether or not I agree with it, whether or not anybody else agrees with it, it's none of your fucking business what she does with her own damn body. Or what any of us do.
Well, I mean, I would never be in the business of like telling anyone what to do,
right?
With their own body.
Right. But you know what I mean?
Or judge them, yeah.
This is exactly what I'm talking about with, people need to... I mean, everybody's so fucking offended about everything, and everybody thinks that they're right and everybody else is wrong, no matter what.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I just saw something recently that the more you try to convince someone else, mm-hmm. right, of your position, the more entrenched they become in theirs.
Oh yeah,
so
the harder and farther they dig
shoving the splinter
in.
More and more in, right?
Yeah, and all I'm saying is, even though it's something that I don't necessarily agree with, I can agree that it's not my decision to make.
Well, for the purposes of what I was trying to get at is like, we can agree that it's definitely not a federal issue. It's definitely not an issue where the federal government needs to be involved.
Yeah.
You can either leave it to the states or the people themselves. Mm-hmm. If you found yourself here, and you relocated from Washington, and you relocated because at one point in your life you valued freedom, more than anything else, and then you realize this abortion thing came down, and this automatic trigger in the state constitution of Idaho made abortion illegal, and you came to the new realization that having the freedom to be able to have an abortion is more important because I believe in overall freedom. Well, I'm going to go back to Washington, right? So it's like, and that's how I would interpret it, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like, coming from Southern California, you're not shoveling a lot of driveways in December, right? It's not happening. You don't have to worry about sun, excessive sun, delaying my commute to work. Mm-hmm. It's not going to happen. But that's not as important to me as the freedom of being in a location where there's people that are more of like mind. Right. So while everyone's getting offended, as you say, then they use it as a badge of honor. For the most part, the people I've been exposed to after relocating here, they're not like that. Right? Maybe on the internet and social media, there's a lot of people that are like that.
Yeah.
I don't know a lot of people personally. I don't know, anyone in the group that we attend that's like that. So, I mean, that's more important to me than weather. Right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, you figure out what's important to you, and things change. It's no one's preventing you from going back to Washington or Oregon. If the abortion would turn out to be that important of an issue to you, you can go back, right? No one's preventing that.
Well, essentially what you're saying is, if you don't like it, fucking go somewhere else.
And that's pretty much...
I mean, that goes straight down to all the shit with, we could dive into cancel culture.
Sure.
People basically taking anything and everything out of context, or just being offended over stuff that gets said, especially on TV anymore. Mm-hmm. Whoa, you shouldn't say this in that movie, blah blah blah, because it's offensive to so blah blah blah. The list goes on and on.
Sure.
Change the fucking channel.
Right. That's so funny because
Don't listen to that comedian. He's not your cup of tea.
One of the guys that I listened to, like on his like BitChute channel, because of course he's deplatformed everywhere else. Like he was going on, and my wife and I were watching it, and he was going on about World Cup for some reason and comparing it to hockey. My wife's like, "This is boring. Like, why is he doing this?" And it's almost as if he read her mind or knew some people were going to say that. And he's like, "You know what? If you don't like this, I haven't gotten into the show yet, but if you don't like this, you know, you can all fuck off or like change the channel or fuck off. I don't really give a shit. This is my show, and I don't really care."
Yeah,
right? That's how he was. I'm like, yeah, you're absolutely right. Change the channel.
Yeah. Well, and personally, if I'm going to go to like, you know, the Spokane Comedy Club and I'm going to go watch a show, I'm going to pay money to go see a comedian.
Right.
Unless it's somebody that I already know, I'm going to go onto their website and I'm going to watch some of their stuff on YouTube.
Yes.
And I'm going to look them up and I say, well, is this even somebody, you know, that I think is funny?
Yeah.
Is it somebody who even though they make, you know, a few political jokes that I don't really care for, you know, is it worth me getting upset about and walking out of a show or not watching them on TV? No. Like, just because I don't necessarily agree with everything they say doesn't mean they're not funny.
Right.
So,
well, and just because like there might be one song on Guar's set list that isn't your favorite doesn't mean you're not going to go to like the concert and hear all the other great songs.
Yeah.
It's the same concept.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm gonna do my research. You know, is it somebody that I'm going to have a good time to go see?
Yes.
Because I'm not going to be that guy in the middle of their set who stands up and gets all pissed off, you know, and ruins the show for everybody else. And, well, that's horrible, and you shouldn't have said that, and I'm offended, and blah, 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 and then walk out. Because not only have I now ruined the show for everybody else, or maybe not. Maybe now I just look like a total fucking tard, and the comedian can use it as
exactly,
you know?
Right. What do they call it, riffing?
Yeah, riffing, and they could just basically verbally beat the shit out of me on my way out the door.
Yeah.
You know, but now I've wasted my time and I've wasted my money.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and that's really what I'm probably going to be more pissed about. When instead I could have just had some foresight and looked them up on YouTube and been like, that's not really my thing.
Or watch
I'll wait for somebody else.
watch Bill Burr for like the 5th time and still laughed.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, right.
And not have to go anywhere.
Yeah.
Right? You could be in your freaking sweatpants and just watch someone that you know is going to be funny and make you laugh no matter how many times you've seen him.
Yeah. I actually pulled up earlier. It's Bill Burr and Jim Jeffries, who, I mean, they're kind of, I mean, they're not polar opposites, but like Jim Jeffries has some interesting views on gun control and stuff. And of course we all know about Bill Burr, but
yeah, I don't recognize Jim Jeffries, quite honestly.
He's Australian. And I mean, he's a funny dude. I like him. But so they're on Lights Out with David Spade, which is a Comedy Central show, and they're talking about Shane Gillis getting booted from SNL. So I don't know if you know who Shane Gillis is.
Okay, yeah, I kind of. I think I saw a headline about this, but I can't remember the details.
So Shane Gillis is a comedian, and I think he holds the current record for the shortest stint on SNL history.
Oh.
So what happened was he got the job on SNL. Mm-hmm. And then within like 24 hours, somebody on the SNL staff, I think it was, had dug through
his old Twitter feed.
Oh yeah, his old Twitter stuff and podcasts that he had been on, and found something unscrupulous where
misogynist,
I believe he made a joke, and in the joke he used the N-word, and he said something in it.
Of course.
I mean, I don't know. I honestly haven't seen it.
Sure.
I mean,
but basically it was enough to get him canceled.
Yeah, it was enough for them to get really pissed off and release it all over the place. And so, I mean, he had to do what he had to do. Not Chuck Lorre. What's oh my God, the guy that runs SNL. I can't remember his name.
Well, it used to be Lorne Michaels.
Lorne Michaels, yes. Okay. So Lorne Michaels, I mean, he did what he had to do. He calls up Shane and he says, "Hey, look, sorry, but now that this is broke, I tried to fight for you, but we can't have it.
Dude, you're not Bill Murray. Let's face it. If you're Bill Murray, I'd have your back.
Right? You're not Chevy Chase.
You're not Joe Rogan and Spotify. You're not like our cash cow. Like, no one knows you. You haven't really even proved yourself.
So Shane Gillis officially was hired onto the cast, and before ever doing an episode, within like 2 days, he was fired. Okay. And it was because of this.
Sure.
And so he was on Joe Rogan, and he goes over, the entire experience, the whole thing that happened, and his experience of being quote unquote canceled, and how he felt about it, and how it really fucked him up. And you know, the thing that supposedly he had said, you know, he was joking around, and it wasn't meant to be disparaging. He wasn't, you know, yeah, maybe he shouldn't have said it.
He could have been quoting a rap song for all we know.
Something, yeah.
And to be in full context, he would have used someone else's word.
Right, and that's I feel like that's a lot of what is going on with all the cancel culture horseshit. Is they find anything to just be upset about, and they take it out of context. And I mean, anytime you focus on just the one part, right? The one part where he said the N-word. Sure. If you were to focus on that and trim the video down to that 5 seconds,
sure.
Yeah, it's going to sound bad. Of course it is. It's going to sound not very compelling and good. But if you look at the entire picture and you watch the entire video and you watch the entire joke unfold and why he's using that word, whether or not he should use it, sure, that's a whole other argument. But if you look at it in the context of why it was used, that's a totally different ballgame, you know?
Of course. Well, that's not, but you're implying that the objective is truth. But the objective is not truth.
It's not
the
truth.
objective is to put another freaking head on your wall of woke, right?
It's to put another notch in your woke belt.
You're just a hunter, and you got him dead to rights. You have him point blank with this one word.
Yeah.
So just cut out everything else, put the one word, that's the kill shot, and his head is mounted on your wall. Mm-hmm. My question to you is, what's the definition of canceled? Don't you actually have to be on an episode before you're canceled? You just have to be hired?
Well, that was the thing, though, is it blackballed him. He had a hard time getting on anything else. And thankfully, because Shane Gillis is a fucking great comedian, he decided to just go and do his own thing. So he started...
That's the beauty of the internet, right?
He started a YouTube channel just called Gillian Keeves. Okay. It's him and a buddy of his. Yeah. And so they do all these funny, like, sketch comedy things on their own. And then he's been doing comedy specials and stuff. He just released his own, like, you know, produced it and everything on his own, released a comedy special, and he's just doing his own thing.
And for all we know, this could be the best thing that ever happened to him. Right? He's going to be grateful that he's not on a show that just like is basically never going to like live up to like the reputation that it built itself on. It's never going to be like Eddie Murphy and Bill Murray and Chevy Chase. It's never going to be Chris Farley again. It's never going to be any of those people. Like it's never going to be Norm Macdonald with the Weekend News Tonight or whatever it is. It's never going to be that. Never going to be Gilda Radner. It's all like in the past. Their best days are way behind them. Yeah, right? They've jumped the shark a long time ago.
Jumped the shark. Yeah. So this is a clip of that show.
David Spade's fantastic too.
Yeah, he is.
They immediately fired him about jokes he'd made in the past. As a former member of SNL, I feel my duty to stay out of the fray and let you guys comment.
Yeah.
So it's Bill Burr and Jim Jeffries on.
The guy shouldn't have been fired. It's just a couple of things back in his history. We're going to go through everyone's history.
Yep.
Or are we going to get rid of every sketch that SNL has done that involves race? Like I remember John Belushi dressing as an Asian man with a samurai sword. Yeah. That was the whole sketch. Yeah. or maybe
I remember that too.
We could have what was it? Mike Myers. He used to play a Japanese host like this, and if they got the question wrong, they had to cut their hand off. Yeah. And I remember nothing that you did wrong.
Yeah. I was smart. Mine got cut at rehearsal.
Did they go back and also try to look at good things that the person might have done, or are they just looking for the bad stuff? Is it
they're just looking for the bad stuff.
Cat out of a tree.
Yeah.
That's not it. Help grandmother walk across the street. That's not it. You know, said something on a podcast. There it is.
Yeah, you know what?
I mean, you could do that. You could honestly do that.
Hey, check it out.
To anybody. So
it's the same table at the coffee shop we go to.
Like you can't work in a sketch show, but like it's okay for he can work in a lumber yard.
You'll see it when it goes by.
He's certainly going to meet more Asians there, right?
Oh, yeah.
On SNL, it's a joke about how SNL's not hiring Asians.
Yeah, but also...
Now I'm in trouble.
Yeah, he's in trouble.
Yeah.
We're not running for office. When is this going to end?
Well, if you ran for office, you'd actually be protected.
Right?
Get people in trouble.
That's right.
Isn't the biggest story that this is the first Asian cast member they have? You know what I mean? Like 10 years, 11 years ago when I came to America, I asked to audition for SNL, and the response I got was, no, he's not American. Oh. So, you know, I know all us white people look the same to you.
I think when
Which
I
is
was
bullshit.
younger
I mean, that
at
shouldn't
SNL,
matter.
When you get hired, the first move wasn't to rifle through your past to make sure you get fired right away.
Right.
Because I heard the guy that won the Heisman, and then within an hour, someone's like, well, I went back 15 years, and guess what? He did something shitty. It's like, yeah, we all do.
I think if you go back 15 years in somebody's life, someone should then go back 15 years in your life. And,
and that's what's happened, right? So some of these reporters, you know, they think they're all like high and mighty and like, you know, superior. They have been investigated. So what was it? The guy in Iowa, like I can't remember this. This happened within the last year. Oh, the details escape me. But he was some reporter trying to report on someone to get them canceled, and then someone dug up this reporter's past and found out something that he did, and he ended up getting fired from his journalism job.
Good.
Yeah. So, I mean, you have to because what's good for the goose is good for the gander, right?
Yeah. All of these people, they act like they have no skeletons in their own closet.
Right.
Like they're, you know, up on this fucking pedestal and they're up on high and they've never done anything wrong and blah, blah, blah. Horse shit.
Absolutely.
Let's look at your fucking news feed. Let's look at all the shit that you ever put on Facebook and Twitter and everything you've ever said on a podcast that you've been on.
As one of the sayings goes that you're making me think, it was like every sinner has a future and every saint has a past.
Yeah.
Right. So even you think that you're so saintly and virtuous now, by your signaling, I guarantee you have a past. There's something that can be found in your past. Maybe we're smart enough to leave it off the internet, but I bet you I can find an eyewitness. You know, if I really tried hard enough, right? If you have a living parent, you're probably in trouble.
Yeah, no shit, right? Yeah, because your parents know everything you've ever done,
right?
Or at least probably most of it,
right? So then the question is, why is this? Because you mentioned earlier, like human nature, and you mentioned greed. So how does this play into human nature that you really are so preoccupied with wanting to take someone down who's got success than really just worry about your own success?
Well, in a sense, I mean, that greed could be a part of it. And what I mean by that is the feeling of being loved by people, right? Or being seen as this great person who never does anything wrong, right? Because everybody craves that feeling of, you know, being in the limelight and having attention and, you know, being somebody that everybody likes and approves of. So, I mean, that could play into greed as well. Okay. People are being greedy and wanting that feeling all the time. And the way you do that, it's really easy. You virtue signal like a son of a bitch, and you constantly point out everybody else's flaws, and you wave them in their face, and you post them all over the fucking internet so you can say, look, he's a piece of shit. We need to get rid of him.
Right. There you go, Dave. Fight on. Social justice warrior. Go get him.
That's it. I'm the most anti-social justice warrior person on the planet.
Yeah. Why would you want that? It's like your life is so small that you actually have to spend it, like, you know, taking down other people.
Yeah. Right? You have nothing fucking better to do.
And you're stepping on their heads to think that you're getting above. Like, you above what?
Yeah.
You know, you've done nothing on your own except for take down other people. Like, how is that good? How is that contributing to anything? Right? It's all negative. It's all bad. I don't know what it is in human. I think has to do with like envy and jealousy, right? Yeah. Like you're envious. Like what? Because now I'm curious, like who is the person to dig into this comedian Shane Gillis's past to find these things that he said that got him? Because was it another comedian?
I don't know. That's a good question.
Was it someone who was jealous or envious, who like maybe once upon a time was in Second City with Shane, and like, you know, they were up and coming comedians, and Shane got picked over me to be on Saturday Night Live? Because I think there's a lot of envy and jealousy. You can't just be happy for someone else's success, right?
Saturday Night Live fired Shane Gillis amid controversy, blah, blah, blah. What did Shane Gillis say that got him fired? So this is, I don't know if you'll be able to find it, because I don't know if it's that readily available. But someone is the one who first, like, you know. Yeah, well, there's something from Yahoo News, which I don't know, and then there's another one from the Daily Wire. We can look at that.
You're implying that Yahoo's not your go-to source?
I
have a Yahoo email account, but I don't think I ever look at their news.
I don't know what's worse, Yahoo or NPR.
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, at least, like, you know, our taxes aren't going to pay for Yahoo.
We'll look at three of them real quick and then compare. I mean, that's really what you should do anyway. Anytime you're doing research.
Yeah, I mean,
you should never just go pick one thing in Google and then treat that as gospel.
I'm curious as to whether or not they would even have to cite the person who found it. They would just like say, "Oh, this is what he said on Twitter like 15 years ago," right? They wouldn't say like, "Oh, Joe Blow, like, you know, up and coming comedian, like found that he posted this on Twitter. Like, you know, but I just can't help but think that there is an element of schadenfreude, sour grapes. Like, you're sour that Shane Gillis got this gig and you didn't. Because why are you wasting your time going back like over like what he posted and podcasted like in the past?
Because they have nothing better to do.
Like, aren't you excited about like what the future might be of SNL? Because this guy's a really funny guy and he could possibly bring some creativity and humor to like this show that's starved for it, that's been starved for decades. Like, no, you can't be happy about that. You have to bring him down.
Yeah. So this is it looks like it happened back in 2019.
Uh-huh.
So, somebody in the Saturday Night Live offices.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, looks like that's all that it says about who it was that found it, but.
Okay. So
Shane used to co-host a podcast with Matt McCusker called Matt and Shane's Secret Podcast.
Mm-hmm.
As recently as September 2018, in a video posted to Twitter, I pulled that up, we'll check that out, by Seth Simmons. They reported it covers comedy. The pair imitate Asian people, use anti-Asian slurs, call white women the last funny group of people, and then it says in parentheses, and this is
them
what it says on the website,
right,
by
it's
the way.
not what Dave is saying.
With it says with gay men being the second least funny. It says they use the word gay as a pejorative, utter anti-gay slurs, and call transgender people ladyboys.
Yeah, so, I mean, when you said it was someone at the SNL staff, now I'm thinking like, okay, someone's been, you know, hammering away at the keyboard for years trying to write up funny skits. These people thought that they might get their shot at being on the show, and here along comes this Shane Gillis guy from the outside, and they gave him a gig, and they passed me over. Yeah. Right? So now it's just like it's been reduced to like just a workplace grievance. Right? So they're just trying to take down this guy because he took your spot. Well, I got news for you. Just because you took him down doesn't mean that you're getting the spot. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what you think is going to happen. It's like when they tried to take down Trump with this illegitimate 2016 election. It's like, yeah, well, Hillary, that doesn't put you in the presidency, right? That puts Pence in the presidency. Like, do you not know, do you not know how things work, right?
Yeah, I can't find the audio from it.
No, I mean, I guess my point is that one of the other things about human nature is jealousy and envy are real, right?
Oh yeah.
So those could be contributing factors as to why people would, you know, not spend their time pursuing their own personal individual success, but rather use that time to take down someone else who's successful. And from what you're telling me, Dave, this guy could end up being more successful than Saturday Night Live, right? I mean, podcasts.
I don't know about that.
But I mean, YouTubers. But okay, well,
I would say he's probably. I mean, the more exposure that he gets, and the more that he does what he's doing, and he keeps working hard at it, and just doesn't let people shut him down. You know what I mean? Just keep soldiering on, keep doing what you're doing.
Just keep going.
Then yeah, I mean, I think he's going to be successful, and he is being successful.
Well, are there not certain YouTube channels, comedians or otherwise, that are getting more clicks and more views than Saturday Night Live episodes?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, and then same thing with the mainstream media news, right? People are watching alternative news sources, right? They're listening to or watching Joe Rogan's podcast more than they are like CNN, right? So
yeah.
So I mean, eventually this guy could be in a situation where his YouTube channel blows up and gets more followers, subscribers, views than any Saturday Night Live episode. You know?
Oh, that's what it is. I can't find it because
it's blocked now.
Yeah, it's probably blocked.
Yeah, that's not too surprising.
Yeah, that's my favorite thing is when people say shit online and then they get the backlash, and so they go on and they delete it like they never said it.
Yeah, sorry, the Wayback Machine or whatever it's called, the time machine or something, they can find it for you, right?
Yeah.
So it's the cover-up's becoming worse than the crime.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, oh, no, I didn't say it. Oh, shit, you didn't say it. You said it. Now, either you feel bad about it because you realize that maybe you did hurt somebody's feelings, and maybe in the moment, your intention was to be mean, even if you didn't mean to be mean, you were, and you realize that. And so then you make that decision of, okay, well, am I going to own it?
Yes.
And apologize for it?
Yes.
Because I really do feel bad about how I may have made someone feel. Or do you know that in that moment it was either a joke that people are taking out of context, or, you know, you said it and you don't really mean it? Humor really, I think, would be the only excuse for why.
Yes, it was misinterpreted.
Yeah.
It was a joke that fell flat, something like that.
Or one of those things where you said what you said, but somebody cut it down to that just 5 seconds, and they're not including the rest of it where it was part of an entire discussion, where you said, now look, this isn't me saying this. This is what I'm reading in this blog.
Right. And that was all edited out.
And so now they're using it to make you look like a piece of shit, even though you didn't really mean what you said for whatever reason. Now at that point, that's when you go, okay, am I going to apologize for this or not? If you know that you didn't mean to be mean, or that it's being taken out of context, don't apologize.
Exactly. Well, apology that's just like blood in the water for those sharks, right?
Oh,
that's
yeah.
what they want, because then that's their first step, and then they got you backpedaling, you're on your heels. That's one of the first rules. So this guy, was it Vox Day? It's a guy that our mutual acquaintance who used to run the group mentions, and he's got a blog or something. He's kind of outside the system, but he wrote some book. I think I listened to the audio book, how to deal with social justice warriors. And the first rule is you don't apologize, right? And there's a way to, I think you kind of just touched on it. There's a way to own what you said and what you did without necessarily having to apologize.
Right.
Right? You can say yeah, that was me. Those are my words. It's okay, well then, after that, it's up to the person. But people have their predetermined biases already as it is, right? So I bet you the people that wanted to take down Shane Gillis, they disliked him for whatever reason before they even found the stuff to cancel him, right?
Yeah.
Because they were motivated to cancel him for some other reason. Why else would you want to dig into someone's past like that, right?
Again, because they have nothing better to do, and they want to have somebody that they can blast all over the internet, and they can say, hey, look, I did the work, the legwork, to go and find this piece of shit and, put him on display for everyone to see so that we can get rid of him because he's saying things that are offensive and mean and blah, blah, blah. Well, is he really? And we already know that, most of the shit anymore that ends up on the fucking internet, it's all horse shit anyways.
Yep.
Because they're just making shit up to get fucking clicks. Because the media is now so driven by money and greed, right? The more clicks you get, the more money you make, because it's all advertising.
That's the absolute legacy media.
So if you have nothing...
Brought to you by Pfizer.
Yeah, if you have no real fucking news, what are you going to do, right? It's the same thing with... I've heard this talked about just today, too, with police having quotas.
Uh-huh.
So if you have... If no crime's going on and you're not making any arrests, well, you're not meeting your quotas, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
sure.
What are you going to do? You're going to invent
pull
something.
The guy over, spit gum on the sidewalk.
Yep. You're going to find anything and everything to fuck somebody over with just so you can fill that quota. Well, it's the same thing with the news anymore. Yeah. You're going to find anything and everything, even if you have to make it up or, take that one thing that somebody said out of context and trim it down to that 5 seconds of that conversation that makes them look like a piece of shit, just so you can put it out on your website and generate clicks. And then you put a ridiculous fucking headline to it that shows up in everybody's Google News feed that makes them go, oh, what? And then when they click on it and they actually read it, they get to the end and you find all the comments that are like, you stupid piece of shit.
Right.
Clickbait.
Yeah. But unfortunately, you'd have to do all that work. Most people just look at the headline and be like, oh, Shane Gillis, bad.
Yeah, right.
So every time they heard the word Shane Gillis, so they're going to be racist, homophobic, right? We're a bunch of NPCs walking around, just dumb it down for me, so I can just reduce everything to something simple. It's black or white, right? Yeah, it's Red Sox or Yankees.
They're doing the same thing I do. They're
right.
sitting on the shitter looking through their news feed,
right?
But unfortunately, I read. A lot of people don't.
Yeah,
I see something like that, and I'm like, okay, what's going on?
Right. If it's worth your clicking.
If it's worth my clicking,
because that's the first layer is to determine
I like
whether or not.
I like Shane Gillis. I think he's a great fucking comedian. So yeah, if I see his name, I'm going to click on it.
Yeah. Well, and humor is such a matter of personal preference anyways, right? That's just like a taste, I don't know, wine or food. Oh yeah, Chappelle. I didn't watch the SNL, but I did hear that his monologue wasn't the one that he submitted to the editors before.
Probably not.
Yeah, so he gave them he gave them one, and then talk about Mount Everest and comedians. I think of living comedians. That guy's on the Mount Everest of them. That guy's hysterical.
Dude, I love Dave Chappelle.
Yeah, he's just amazing. He's so talented.
And
that show that he had, like on Comedy Central, the Dave Chappelle show, just all the different characters he played, and he's just fantastic, man.
Dude, all of that horse shit about his special, The Closer. Everybody getting so up in arms, the whole LGBT community, and like, all pissed off.
What's the deal?
Because he said all of these things that are dangerous and you know, all the blah, blah, blah. Did you watch the whole fucking thing?
Yeah.
Or did you just turn it off as soon as he started talking about LGBTQ stuff?
Right.
Did you? No, you didn't.
Right.
Because if you did, you would have realized that the whole thing that he was saying, it was a story. It was a story that he was telling about the fact that, you know, it was somebody that he knew that, God, now I can't even remember. It's a friend that was transsexual. And at the end of this story, he's basically saying that, you know, he felt bad because of what happened to this person. They killed themselves. And he felt like shit about it because even though he doesn't agree with that lifestyle and all that stuff, what he feels personally about it, he knew this person personally. And he was able to set all of that aside and thought that they were really good, you know, and it was, I think it was an up and coming comedian. And he was like, man, it was hurt me a lot because they were a great person and they were a friend of mine. And then
he's grieving a loss.
Exactly.
I mean, blatantly.
But even he is saying that even though he doesn't agree with this, he can put his feelings aside and recognize that it's a human being and have feeling and compassion for them. Which, I mean, that's really all it's about. And we don't have to agree with each other. We don't have to agree with each other's lifestyles.
I would take it one step further, Dave, and say, like, he loved his friend that offed himself to the point where if you really want equality, you know what that equality includes? Being made fun of like the rest of us.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? You want to be in the club where you're equal with everyone else? Guess what? We talk shit about each other all the time.
Right.
We're poking fun at each other all the time.
Yeah.
What, you want to be excluded from that? You want to be a separate, so you don't want to be equal. You want to be separate and you want to be at a higher level so that you're outside of being made fun of.
Right.
Human beings make fun of each other all the time.
Right.
Teenagers up to like old men, right? We're always making fun of each other. That's part of the human existence. That's part of interaction. That's the way I would argue that especially men show their affection for one another. They give each other crap, right? They're giving each other crap. They're talking smack all the time, right?
Yeah.
And that's how they do it. So it's like, okay, he's taken he's courageous act of showing that same love in a way that to this community with whom he doesn't agree, but he's still willing to show that form of love by giving them crap. Because we all take crap.
Yeah.
You want to be equal, you're taking crap.
Yeah.
You're not immune to it. You're not like, outside of it. You got to take crap with like the rest of us.
Yeah, when I'm hanging out with my friends and my brothers and they're fucking with me.
Yeah.
And, whatever, making little dick jokes or something, like, I'm not going to get upset about it. I laugh my ass off.
Of course.
And you dish it back.
Because
have fun.
You're in the club. You're with people that actually care enough about you that they can like poke fun at you.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like poking fun at someone doesn't mean that you're like against them or you're like phobic or any of this other nonsense. It actually means in a way like you are treating them as equal. Right?
Yeah, what it comes down to really, I think, is people have just forgotten how to laugh at themselves.
Absolutely. And that's why it's so challenging now. So you mentioned these comedians. It's like, not that I wouldn't have less respect for Bill Burr, but if Bill Burr was back in like, the days of, I don't know, Andy Kaufman or like, the comedians of the 70s or something like that, I'd be like, yeah, well, you could say a lot more stuff and get away with it because not everyone was taking personal offense and everything. But the fact that you're making a living as a comedian now, when you pretty much can't say anything, right? Like, what are you going to talk about? Like laundry? And like someone's going to be offended. Like, oh, you're separating the whites. Like what the heck? Like you can't talk about anything. And without it possibly being offensive.
Yeah. Because everybody's going to find something to be offended about.
So to be a comedian in today's day and age is impressive.
Well, there's a huge argument going on now, especially with all the cancer culture shit, about how funny and TV and everything is just not funny anymore.
Yeah.
Because you can't say anything.
How could you be funny?
Right. So I was looking earlier before you got here, just doing some research and looking up stuff, and so many articles that I found that were just back and forth. You've got all of these ones that are talking about how cancel culture has made everything so sterile, and everybody's so afraid to say anything and to just have fun and maybe say something that's a little bit edgy for fear of getting canceled or people, having or just getting backlash. So everybody's just not saying anything. Yeah. And I feel that way. Like anything that comes out on Netflix anymore, I barely watch Netflix because everything is so fucking dumbed down and so sterilized, and you just can't say anything. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
I feel like the exact opposite. Like I was wondering as I'm driving over here, like what's the, because honestly, like I'm so happy for you in this show that you have, that I'm like, how am I going to know, like when Dave's the podcast, when Guys in the Garage has really made it, And so I came up with my own metric, and that is like when I get canceled. In other words, because now
I've actually thought the same thing too.
So it's like, because you mentioned like, oh, there's some people that might be willing to come on, but they need to use like an alias, and I'm like, I'm not doing that, right? Now trying to, in the latter part of my life, trying to live up to the value that my wife holds so dear, which is of honesty, right? Because I've been lying to myself and other people for decades, and now it's like, going to be honest. It's like, why am I going to hide myself now? I'm not trying to disparage anyone that would come on here anonymously. I understand you have to do what you got to do, but I think my metric for your success is if this ends up in someone's hands who I happen to work with, which I don't really have any work friends, and it gets to the bosses, and I said something that they consider like offensive, and I get an email or a phone call saying like I'm fired, then I'm like, Dave's finally made it, right? He got me canceled. God bless him.
Enough people are listening.
Yeah, because quite honestly, it's like I've been in a way trying to get fired for like 2 or 3 years now because I'm not complying with their nonsense, right? They've let me so far continue, so I'm grateful for that. But that's what I would say. So getting canceled. What did you say? You said in one of your recent episodes, I think it was the P.T. Barnum quote, like, there's no such thing as bad publicity.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
I think that's totally true. It holds true to this day, right? Shane Gillis may be getting more clicks now than if he ever did on Saturday Night Live.
It's very possible, and especially after all of that, with his name being out there, and he's really good friends with Joe Rogan. He goes on Rogan all the time when they do their Save Our Parks podcast.
Okay.
So it's always him, Mark Normand, Shane Gillis, and Ari Shaffir. And the whole thing started because one of Ari's rants about a park that I think was across the street from his apartment building that they were going to bulldoze, and he was trying to save it, which ultimately he didn't. But it was basically them making fun of him and fucking with him. So they started this a series of
Save Our Parks
of episodes, and they called it Save Our Parks, right?
Yeah.
And just like we were talking about with your friends and people who love you the most, they fuck with you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's really what they were doing, and it turned into a thing.
That's great.
But it's the four of them just hanging out and talking about, this, that, and the other thing, and having fun, and they're usually pissed drunk by the end of it.
Yeah. That's great entertainment. But I concur with the challenge of being funny these days. It's very challenging. That's why I'm very grateful that, my wife and I and our daughter, like we all kind of have a similar sense of humor. So most of it's kind of become like inside jokes. Like I know even in the presence of other people, like I'll say something and the only person who'll laugh is my wife, because she kind of like knows, what I'm talking about. Like she gets it, right? And that's okay. That's because, after a while, I'm sure it's the cases for you. Like the laughter from your wife and your daughter actually holds more value in your ears than like the laughter of a stranger. It's nice to hear like a stranger's laugh too, but it's like the laughter you're used to hearing the most, right? And as you know, the older your daughter gets, the rarer the laughter becomes, right? Because it's more challenging to make them laugh, especially when they're teenagers, right? Their threshold, when they're little, they're like, you can make funny faces and they'll laugh, right? When they're teenagers, you need to be a little more sophisticated, right?
Yeah, and cancel culture, the ability to be canceled really comes down, I think, to how much value you place on everybody else's opinion of you. I mean, that's not all of it. Obviously, if there's enough stink raised about you and something you've done or said, it's going to affect you in the business. It's going to blacklist you. You're not going to be able to get acting roles or, whatever else. It does have real consequences. But as far as how you feel about it personally, you know, and mentally, if you know you've really done nothing wrong and what you said or did is being taken out of context and somebody's just using it to be mad because they want to be mad and or they're using it to make you look like shit so that they can make themselves look great.
Right.
Fuck them.
They want to stand on your shoulders and be seen.
Yeah. Like,
yeah. Well, you touch on something that's actually even before cancel culture that is very common in the life of a quote nice guy, right? And that is being more concerned with the opinions of others than your own opinion of yourself.
Right.
Right. And so that's how, I mean, that was like my oxygen when I was like younger, right? So anyone that would happen to listen to this who knew me in high school, they'd know like how obsessed I was with being popular, right? Had to be student body president or class president, had to be like the captain of the wrestling team, all this stuff to do all these things so that I would get the accolades and affirmation from outside myself, from other people, and inside my own head, I'm just like, you're still not worthy. You're not worthy. Something's wrong with you, right? Like not, and it took me moving to northern Idaho and learning about, you know, the group in which we met to start the journey of caring more about how I think about myself than the opinions of others, right? So I think that's a larger thing that you're kind of getting at with cancel culture. Now, these people that are public figures, I can't relate to that, not being a public figure. So I'm sure they have to be concerned with their publicist calling them, or, you know, Adidas or whoever's sponsoring them. They have to be concerned with all these other voices because it's affecting their income, right? Because when you say cancellation, it's almost like, you know, they're going to take away their livelihood, right? But for me, I'm just talking about more in general of like how my self-esteem is impacted by the feedback of others, right? And it should be more impacted by, you know, the feedback that I give myself based on any, you know, given day or period of time, right?
Yeah, all I know is at some point I realized how I feel about me and who I am is of the utmost importance. If I feel like I'm a piece of shit, then that's what really matters. And that's when I'm going to either apologize for something or, you know, or not.
Or take the action to change.
Yeah,
like
to change myself and become a better person and not make the same mistakes that I've made before.
Right.
So, I mean, in reality, the main people whose opinion of me matters most is my wife and my kid and, you know, my immediate family.
Yep.
You know, and I mean, even that to some degree is a little bit...
grains of salt.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to consider everybody, sure. You know, if somebody comes to me and says, hey, you know, you said this thing and it kind of hurt my feelings, you know, why would you talk about that? Okay, I'm going to consider it and I'm going to think about it. But I'm going to also talk to you about why you had an issue with it and, you know, maybe why it hurt your feelings. And if we come down to the conclusion that, okay, what I said was mean, but I didn't really mean to be mean, then I'm going to, you know, I will explain myself to you, even though I don't have to. I don't have to explain myself to anybody. You know what I mean? It's going to come down to that final decision of, should I apologize or are you just being a little bitch?
Yes.
Was it something that I said, even though I'm fucking with you, was meant to be funny and it was meant out of love for you? Or was I really being an asshole? If I was really being an asshole...
You probably knew it at the time you said it.
Yeah.
Right. So you probably knew, like, as soon as it came out of your mouth, like, oh, I'm going to owe an apology to someone on that one.
Yeah.
Right. So, like, if you had to actually, like, listen and reflect, you probably know you don't owe an apology.
Yeah. And
right?
when it comes to comedians, dude, their job is to make jokes and make people laugh. And that means joking about everything. Because anything can be funny if you know how to word it correctly and your delivery's good and your timing is good. I mean, that's what we pay comedians to do, is to make fun of us and to make fun of everybody else.
And what's usually not funny, maybe there has been one and I just haven't found it funny, is an apology. It's like apologies just aren't funny.
No, they're not.
So it's like your job's to be a comedian. So offend away.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're going to get to me eventually, you know, in terms of the general demographic category. But I mean, offend away. I know that's part of the contract that I implicitly entered when I paid money to see you perform. right? It's like I was presuming that you would be offensive because that's in large part what humor is.
Yeah.
Right? That's what it is. I accept those terms.
Yeah. When I go to a comedy show, I'm almost jealous when I'm, not picked out of the crowd by the guy to fuck with.
Exactly. It's like the guy that is picked on, you're like, damn, I wish they picked on me, right?
I should have sat at that table.
Yeah, exactly. It's so true. Yeah. But the topic of apologies. So one of the books that came to my attention as a result of being in this group we're in is When I Say No, I Feel Guilty, right? So a pretty fascinating book because one of the topics, the one that stuck with me the most after finishing listening to it, it was an audiobook for me, was about apologies, right? And after this, I become so much more sensitive to hearing others apologize and actually noticing when I apologize. And that's what I think I heard when you were talking about it in regards to the cancel culture. And it's like, I'm going to issue an apology if, first of all, I deem it fit and appropriate. And therefore, that apology is going to, in my opinion, carry greater value because I've reflected, I've contemplated on it. It's not a reflexive thing, right? You can go to any restaurant and you got the waiter, waitress apologizing for anything. Oh, I'm so sorry that you waited so long. Oh, I'm so sorry, or there's no ice in your water, whatever it is. You're going to hear 1,000 apologies between the time you sit down and the time you get your check. And so when I start noticing that, I'm like, my goodness, like these people's apologies, their value is not very high.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm like now more reserved because I used to be that way. I used to feel like, oh, I'm so sorry that it's snowing. It's like that's under my control,
Yeah. So many people are apologizing anymore for anything and everything. It just doesn't mean dick anymore.
Right. So it's like if you are going to issue an apology, then you want it to have some value. Otherwise, it's going to be like, I'm sure you've seen in movies or experienced in real life, like, oh, you didn't mean it.
Yeah.
Or say it like you mean it, right? It's like, yeah, I will try to apologize less than I have in the past because I want it to mean something when I do apologize.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Somebody apologizing for, just like bumping you or something while they were walking by, especially in a crowded place where there's so many other people. It's like, oh, hey, I'm so sorry. For what? You bumped into me.
Yeah.
Because somebody probably pushed you. Right.
It's like, what? Did you pick my pocket? Did you take my wallet? Like, what are you apologizing for?
Yeah. Everybody apologizes for everything. And it's like, why? Why is everybody saying sorry for everything?
That's a great question. Why do you say that is? Because you can't go after someone who apologizes? Because that's the end of it. Like, oh, I'm sorry. Like, I owned it. I've apologized. That's it. You can't get any more blood from me.
Yeah. Yeah, I know somebody who, and I don't want to say where I know them from or anything, but they apologize very frequently for everything. Like just walking by or something, like they move in a stairwell or something, to get out of the way, and oh, I'm so sorry, blah, blah, blah. And every time I hear it, I want to say, stop apologizing. Stop apologizing for just being you and existing, because you say it so often that it's really more annoying than anything. Like, what do you have to be sorry about? That you happen to be at the bottom of the stairs when I decided to come down? Like, don't apologize. Right. Just either I can move over and you can walk up on the other side of the stairs, or you can just wait for me to come down. And then as I go by, like, hey, how's it going? And then you go up. Like, you have nothing to be sorry for. This person apologizes very frequently, and I always want to say something, and I never do.
So I would challenge you to say something.
I probably should,
and just be like,
and I don't mean to be mean. It's more uplifting.
You
know
care
what I mean?
for that person.
Exactly.
You care for that person.
Don't apologize for doing your job. Don't apologize for existing, and don't apologize for just being you. Like, you say sorry way too much,
and you're helping that person, because guess what? If they start curbing the frequency of their apologies, especially to people that they, don't know very well. Apparently, I mean, this sounds like an acquaintance, if anything. It doesn't sound like doesn't sound like a close friend. Otherwise, you probably would have had this conversation, right? So
it's an acquaintance, and really, it comes down to self-esteem, and this person's probably their own, inside vision of themselves.
Yeah. So you're helping that person in their personal life when they encounter a situation that requires a really legitimate, sincere apology. Because if they're apologizing this much to people they barely know, they're probably apologizing to everyone. Like they're
more than likely, yeah.
They're probably apologizing all over the place. So to people that really are in a situation where they might need a genuine, sincere, heartfelt apology from this person, right? They're going to see it as not of much value because they're dishing out apologies like oxygen.
Yeah.
Right? They're everywhere. So by you actually saying your piece to this person, I see it as giving them an opportunity to increase the value of their apologies. Not just to you, but to everyone.
Yeah.
Right? That's how I see it. Because if you're then your apologies mean nothing.
Yeah.
Right? You've just devalued them, like worse than the freaking dollar.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, you should only really be apologizing when you know you've done something wrong, and you should own up to it. And you should always own up to it.
Yes.
But if you don't see that you've done something wrong, and I mean, yeah, there's times when maybe you just don't know. And if you don't know, you don't know. And if someone has, explains it to you and it is logical and it makes sense, like, hey, what you did is an issue because, and if it's really something that makes sense, and you hurt somebody in some way, then okay. I mean, it's such a fuzzy line. It's such a gray area between everything, right? Because on the other side of that, you could say, well, buck the fuck up. Why are you being so overly sensitive? I mean, really, everybody needs to have a little bit tougher skin. I mean, we used to have pretty tough skin. It was very hard, in my opinion, to hurt people's feelings, but nowadays, for some reason, everybody is so just soft. Anything you say offends everybody. Everybody wants to be pissed off. And really, I wonder if it has actually changed at all. I wonder if, I'm sure it has, but I wonder if people really are as sensitive as they portray themselves to be, or if people really are just looking for whatever it is they can be upset and victimized over to get attention. Yeah. Like it really didn't hurt their feelings. They don't give a shit, but they can use it to put themselves on a pedestal and say, look at me, I'm hurt.
It could be a generational thing. Not entirely sure, because maybe the more modern technological age, born with a cell phone in their hand types are the latter that you described, that they're actually looking for every opportunity to convert something into being a victim and using that as a virtue signal to bump their ranking up, in society, so to speak. But I think other people, maybe of my generation or before, they will be more silent about it, right? So maybe something that they heard or some feedback someone gave to them, like really resonated and it like hurt them and it got through their thin skin. But you're not going to see any outward manifestation of that, right? You're not going to see them, berating you or yelling at you or going on any type of social media platform to try and get you fired. They're just going to internalize it for the most part, Right. And I'm as guilty as anyone else based on what I just told you about caring too much about the opinions of others, that, when I walk the dogs and I walk by many trees, I actually put my hand on the bark and I ask, let my skin be as thick as your bark. Cause I want it to be tough to the point where people say something about me and the most hurtful thing they can say. And I want it to just basically bounce off it would bounce off a tree, that I'm rooted enough in my own beliefs and my feelings about who I am at the present moment that some outside force isn't going to make me snap in half.
Right.
Right. So but it's a work in progress, because you get to a certain stage, having been in the group that we attend now for going on 3 years, there's people that are in that group, yourself included, that if you were to say something, it would has a better chance of getting through to me, making me reflect upon it and consider it seriously than, someone who's either new to the group or someone that I don't know that well or know casually, right?
Yeah.
I think that's natural.
Yeah.
It seems sensible.
Yeah. But, and for people who don't know what he's talking about, it's a men's group that we attend together every 2 weeks, and it's just a place for guys to get together and just kind of chat about relationship issues or, how we're feeling about ourselves and stuff like that. Just maybe share ideas, books that we're reading. And the whole purpose of it really is just to become better men and just be better at being men. Yeah,
I think that it's broadly categorized. If you were to like look at on a drop-down Amazon menu, it's like the self-improvement section, perhaps, with like with a masculine slant, right?
I hate the phrase self-help, but I mean that is really what it is.
I mean, I think that's why most people go to talk about it, to talk about their wins and talk about some of their losses, and if nothing else, to have someone else like listen to it, like to hear it, right? It's not necessarily a professional counselor, but it's just another man going through life.
Yeah. Well, and the main thing for me is that everybody who's there is there for the same purpose, right? Because we all have, you might argue that, oh, well, you should be able to talk to your friends about stuff like this, or you should be able to talk to your significant other about certain things. Well, and that is all true. Like, it is great to have friends, and it is great to have an understanding partner who you can talk about anything and everything with. But honestly, I feel that's rare. I mean,
indeed,
and I'm not going to come home and unload all of my problems and how I'm feeling about everything in the world to my wife, because she doesn't need that. So what's better than to go to a place where it's a bunch of guys who are all there for the same purpose, and that is maybe to unload or to say, hey, I was doing this with my wife the other day and she got really upset about this thing that I said. Am I really a jerk? Should I have maybe phrased it different, or, is she just being emotional? Is there something I'm missing? Am I not paying attention to some clue that she's giving me that if I were just being a little more open-minded and listening to her better, maybe I'd understand that I'm being a dick,
Yeah.
I mean, that's all it is just helping each other out through experience and knowledge that we each gain from all the different books that we're reading and whatever else.
So, I mean, when you get into a long-term relationship, you and I are both married, like what is the objective, if you will, or purpose of like being married? It's not always to like, it's good times and bad, I understand, but there's not, you don't, like you said, you don't want to dump it all onto your spouse, because you want, that kind of like takes away from some of the good times. And they don't need that. They don't need like the debriefing of everything, right? And when you go to work, your objective at work is different. Your associations at work are more for the objective of getting things done and getting compensated, right? And your friends, you are friends mostly based on timing and geography. You happen to go to the same school in the same area, right, at the same time. So that's how you kind of know them. Now, the bonds that have remained is like maybe there's some common interests that have gone beyond that, such as my buddies that I still golf with that I've known like since 4th grade. We have golfing as like a common denominator. But there's a lot of things that we don't talk about at all, right? So I bring some of the men group discussions to these golf outings, and when I'm riding with individuals on golf carts, I bring something up and I ask them about their marriage. No one in their life is asking them about their marriage. No one in their life is asking about what it's like to be a parent. They're going through this whole experience as just blind. They're just going through the cycle, going to work, having work associations. No one's asking them about at work, right? Their wife's not asking them like, how are you doing as a husband? Or how do you think, they're not having that. Their kid's not asking, how do you think you're doing as a dad?
Yeah.
Right? No one's asking that. So it's like, do you want to be, I think naturally we do want to be asked that. We want to like bounce ideas off of other people, other men that are like either been through the same situation or considering it or something.
Yeah. And that's definitely one of the good parts about the group is that, again, we're all there for the same purpose. So we know that if we go there and, we want to know how we're doing, then we're all accountable to each other. I mean, that's kind of one of the great things about it.
Yeah. And
we usually don't hold back.
Yes. And and I think people feel safe that they can say what they want to say and, not feel judged.
Yeah.
Because I think there's a lot of concern. People feel like, oh, if I say this, I'm going to be judged or whatever. So they're kind of, and then they don't want to lose like the contacts, with the group and
Which is kind of weird, because for me, if I'm gonna be judged, I'd rather it be by you guys.
Interesting. Yeah.
So I mean, if I've got something that I feel like, oh man, maybe this wasn't that great, I'm probably gonna come to you guys and I'm gonna vent there.
A jury of your peers, so to speak.
Yeah, because then that's more insightful to me, knowing like, well, this group of guys, other men, can look at me and say like, yeah, dude, that's fucked up. Why'd you do that? And then I know like, yeah, okay, it's me.
Right. And at the same time, still be there for you. Not be like, I can't believe you did this. We're going to cancel him now.
Yeah, it's exactly.
Right.
Yeah, there's no real cancel culture in the group.
Get him. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just the fire hose of, yeah, you screwed up. This is what you did wrong. Maybe next time you should try this.
Yeah. Or I've been through that myself years ago, and this is what happened in my circumstance.
Yeah.
Maybe you can learn from me. I don't know, because we're adults now. We're not like teenage kids who aren't going to listen to our parents and go and make the same mistakes that they just told us not to, right?
Yeah.
That's okay.
Oh, man.
So what else you got on your mind that you want to talk about?
Well, going back to, what was it? Going back to gun control.
Oh, okay.
I was kind of wondering what your thoughts were about, so going back to gun control and Oregon.
Oh, okay.
So
I don't know much about Oregon laws, except for I know that if you get the enhanced carry in Idaho, that's the one state you can't like carry in.
Yeah. No, I was just wondering what your thoughts were about their new, what is it, SR 114 or?
State Resolution 114. I don't know what that is.
So it requires a permit to buy guns. So you have to have a permit from the state, which means you have to do your background check and all that stuff. And then you have to pass a gun safety course in order to get the permit. Now, I haven't read up on it fully, so I mean, and I'm not a lawyer. I'm not an officer. I really am.
Right. I'm not a lawyer.
In most ways, I don't know shit about the law, but from what I've read, this is what it requires. And then I'm also wondering, and it's something I should look up, is it a shall issue or a may issue? Because there is a difference.
Yes.
So when it comes
shall is more like a mandate, and may is like more open, softer, like,
Right. So certain states.
May or may, when you say may, it means may not.
Yeah. So certain states that do concealed carry permits, they're either a shall issue or a may issue. So like you said, if you pass the background check and you do whatever is required to get your concealed permit, a shall issue means that if you pass, they have to give you your permit. Whereas a may issue
it's like they
means
can decide
they can say, you passed, but I don't like your face, so I'm not going to give it to you.
You passed, but guess what? In the meantime, while we were waiting for your permission, to carry this firearm, we looked up your Twitter feed from 15 years ago. And you said a word that no longer we don't like. Yeah. So, not being a lawyer, but playing one on a podcast, your podcast in particular, I will say that if I understand my limited knowledge of the documents as they exist, that this is a topic specifically mentioned in the Constitution of the federal government, which is supposedly the supreme law of the land, and it's supposed to override any of these state laws.
Which is dicey, though, because we were already discussing that certain things should be state level.
Right, but firearms or the right to bear arms is not one of them, right? That's the Second Amendment. So in the actual original documents, they did happen to mention arms, right? So they didn't mention abortion, they didn't mention weed, they didn't mention gay marriage. Yeah. They didn't mention a lot of other stuff, but they did mention arms, right? So this is where I think that it could be brought. I mean, there's so many. The reason why this country's so jacked up is because we got all the lawyers in the world, right? We got the majority of them. They're either in D.C. running our lives, or they're in the courtrooms battling, which is where I think that this is probably headed, right? Someone is going to take this to court and say that the Constitution overrides this state law because you're in violation of the Second Amendment, right? So the Second Amendment is kind of clear, and it does mention arms, right? So, I mean, and that's how I personally feel about it. I don't feel there should be a litmus test because, I mean, because I think based on what I've heard you say in the past on your prior episodes and just knowing you a little bit, that I feel like you are someone that holds the Constitution in high regard.
Yes, very much so.
Okay, so if you hold the Constitution in high regard, in what you're talking about in the state of Oregon, I believe the Constitution of the United States will trump over that law will probably be overturned It'll be adjudicated in some fashion because I think it is going to be challenged in the courts.
Yeah, it already is. There's already several lawsuits about it.
Yeah, because I don't think that holds water, because you can't do that, because it's not an 10th Amendment issue. This was something that was specifically right in the Second Amendment. So they put it up pretty high, right under free speech, which is a whole nother topic, right? So I think that the Oregon law is bogus. And so I would, if I was someone who was just moved to Oregon and doesn't have any guns, I'd wait it out.
And nothing sells guns better than legislation, anti-gun legislation. Yeah. They have had such a run on people trying to buy firearms since this whole thing came up.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. So what they're trying to stop is everybody and their grandmother literally is now running out and buying a gun just to have it, because they don't want to have to try and go through the whole process to get a permit to buy a gun.
To the point where if you had a conspiratorial mind like I do, you wouldn't be surprised if one of these lobbyists that are in a senator's office, right, in between sessions, is working for Remington or Smith & Wesson.
Yeah.
They'd be like, here, pass these laws, because guess what? We sell more firearms.
Yeah.
I want you to pass laws restricting them, and then guess what? Our business goes up.
Yeah, right.
And then we'll donate to your campaign.
Yeah, well, all you have to do is technically write the legislation and then, deal with the legal battles and then concede and get rid of the law. And in that process, we'll sell a shitload of guns.
Right.
I mean, yeah.
Would you be surprised if
no.
the gun lobby was behind these gun laws? Because if they're actually making more money from it,
as we already talked about greed, I'm not going to rule out anything. I mean, I would like to think that that's not the case, but you never know.
Right.
But it's not only. I mean, that the biggest problem that I have with it, right, is that requiring a permit to buy it in the first place.
Yeah.
Because we require permits now for everything.
Yeah.
You have to have a permit to drive a car. You have to have a permit to go fishing. You have to have a permit to set up a lemonade stand on the sidewalk. I mean, there's kids that literally get tickets because they don't have a business permit.
Yep.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
You're charging 5 cents for a glass of fucking lemonade.
Talk about good cop, bad cop.
Yeah.
Yeah. How's that cop?
So you're going to tell me that even though the Second Amendment protects my right to carry and bear firearms, now you're going to tell me that I have to get a permit, which basically trumps that, excuse me for saying Trump, but it does, it basically tramples on that right. Yeah. So to me, that's why it's horseshit, and I agree that it's probably not going to hold up. But the biggest thing that bothers me is not only that, but they, something that I read said that they don't have the permitting systems in place already. Right? Because this is kind of just came up and blah, 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 and they didn't really think everything through. So now they're going to require everybody to have a permit to buy a firearm, but they don't have any of the systems in place to do the permitting. And already they have been, the FBI and everybody has been flooded, and the state have been flooded with background check requests because of all these people going and buying guns. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, half of these people probably aren't even going to get their background checks back and be able to buy before this takes effect. I think it's December 4th, December 3rd, something like that.
Oh, before the new year even, huh?
Yeah, before the new year even. So, not only that, but they don't have the systems in place to do the permitting.
What system do you need?
Basically,
you're the government. Have a 1-800 number that goes to a busy signal.
Right.
That's your system. No one gets a permit.
Well, the permitting system.
That's still legal?
The permitting system would be the safety course is set up for the amount of people that you're projecting are going to want to go through it to get a permit to begin with. Not to mention the systems in place to create these permits and send them either in the mail or on hand. I mean, you go to the DMV anymore here in Idaho, you usually don't get a plastic license made right then. You get your picture taken, fill out all the paperwork, and then it gets mailed to you.
You get a temporary one for 45 days or whatever.
Yeah, a little paper thing. Yeah, so apparently they don't have the systems in place, as they say, all these systems to actually do the permitting. So what they're saying is that without those systems in place, on December 3rd, when this law goes into effect, essentially all firearm sales will stop because the firearms dealers cannot sell to anyone who doesn't have a permit. Well, if no one has a permit, then no one can buy, right? So if you're somebody who wants to go buy a firearm and now can't, even though your background check is good, you have no criminal record of, any kind of felonies or anything where you may have lost your rights, now nobody can go buy a gun anywhere because this permitting system isn't in place, which to me, I mean, the conspiracy side of me would say, what is their incentive to even put the system in place? Why wouldn't they drag it out for, a year or two, or all of this stupid bullshit state legislation of, well, we need to have some more meetings and we need to figure out exactly how we're going to do these permits and whether they're going to be mailed or issued on site and blah, blah, blah.
That's why I said to you, like, their system is in place. They just need to give like a 555 number out that goes to like a busy signal, and like, that's a system. Sorry, you didn't get a permit. You call this number. The number's busy. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
You don't get a permit.
Exactly.
Right.
They're going to use this, and this is what I feel is going to happen. They're going to use this to drag it out forever, as long as they possibly can, if it does pass. If the lawsuits don't win and this all passes and it stays in place, they'll use this as a way to basically just take away everybody's gun rights. This is a very underbelly kind of way of doing it. Instead of going through the federal government, and instead of going through the state governments of just saying, no, we're going to outlaw guns, which is whatever, all the anti-gun people want to do anyways. They're basically doing that through this, and they're doing it underhandedly and in a very horseshit way of saying, well, we can't sell guns because you don't have permits. Well, we don't have permits because you won't give them to us. Well, we can't give them to you because we don't have the systems in place. Well, if you don't have the systems in place, why the fuck did you go through with this law right now? Or at least not put a provision in it that says firearm sales will continue as normal until permitting can be done. They didn't do that. Why would they do that? Because they don't want people to buy any more guns.
Right. Well, and that also means that since you don't have a system in place, then like an arms dealer, someone who's running a shop isn't going to know, like, when he sees a fake permit or not. Because you don't have like a real permit to compare it to.
Yeah.
So it's like, guess what? I've got a great black market for fake permits, right? You reminded me a bit of this one guy that I used to go to. He had a sandwich shop, right? And the reason why I liked the sandwich shop because of all the collection of imported beers he had, not just in bottles, but on tap, right? And the sign that he had that I found so amazing was, when brewing beer becomes outlawed, only outlaws will brew beer. So this applies to firearms. When firearms become outlawed, only outlaws will own firearms. And the truth is, in today's day and age, that's actually an advantage. Because the people that are like the worst criminals, they're like out on cash bail or whatever. They're in like hours, right? The guy who ran over 25 like police training cadets in Southern California, that guy was out in hours. He's not being held in there. So it's like, what's the disadvantage of being an outlaw? Yeah. Because someone's going to eventually say like, oh, I've always been good. I've always obeyed the law. I pay my taxes, and I want to go the right process and get like the permit so I can buy my guns. But then you start realizing all the criminals around you are getting away with it without having any permits, right? Throwing Molotov cocktails at like federal buildings. Like, why am I caring about a permit anymore? I need to protect my family. Do I really care if I have this permit? Like, if I'm going to be killed, my daughter's going to be killed? Like, no, I'm going to protect them with a firearm, legal or illegal, right? Yeah.
The greatest advantage that criminals have is the fact that they don't give a fuck about the law. That's why they're criminals.
And at some point when we start to have the collective epiphany that the real criminals are the ones that are saying you have to have a permit, they're the criminals. And once you realize that, guess what? Let's fight fire with fire. I mean, in Portland, you're going to be in Portland without a firearm? Yeah. I mean, that place is nuts, Yeah,
I don't understand, the anti-gun debate. Or it's not even a debate, just the fact that they think that by outlawing guns, we'll just get rid of them. Because it won't.
Yeah, sir, just like outlawing drugs, right?
Well, the fact that our own government, right, is one of the biggest drug dealers and arms dealers in the world.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I mean, it has been shown, through declassified documents that they deal with the cartel and they move stuff all the time for the cartel and vice versa. You're not going to get rid of guns.
Yeah.
We are bordered by Canada, which, I mean, they're doing what they're doing. They're trying to get rid of guns too. But then you have Mexico. And then you have, the Panama Canal all the way down to Brazil. I mean, we have a lot of other land connected to us where that shit is just floating and flying its way in here all the time.
Yeah.
So you want to outlaw guns? Okay. All you're really going to do is make them far more expensive and harder to get, but you're not going to get rid of them. And so when we say the greatest advantage that criminals have, is that they don't give a fuck about the law. That's why they're criminals. That's exactly it. If you take away the right of normal people like you and I, who actually do give a shit about law and order, to legally own a firearm because we don't want to be in jail. We like being out and going to work and seeing our families and everything.
That's why I pay my taxes.
Yeah, right? So criminals who don't give a fuck about any of that, like, they thrive in jails and prisons. They just learn how to be better criminals when they go in there most of the time. What are they going to do? They're going to go fucking buy all of the illegal guns.
Sure.
And they're going to do whatever the hell they want to do.
Buy and sell. Yeah. If you want it, I would say you have a challenge either way. If you wanted to, if your objective is to really get rid of guns, like, because like you said, they exist and they're not going away. There's not going to be some mass bonfire where people are just going to be dumping their, AR-15s and letting them like burn into smoke. It's not going to happen.
Right. But even if you did, I mean, criminals are so, I mean, not all of them. I mean, I like to think it's half and half. Half of them are dumber than shit, and they do what they do because they don't know any better. The other half are really fucking smart, and they do what they do because they just don't care.
Right.
But, I mean, criminals are smart, and they're very good at figuring out how to be criminals. And so, again, if you can buy a $300 3D printer, and all you need is that and a laptop and some filament, and you can make a gun, then you're not going to stop it. You're not going to get rid of them.
Yeah. I mean, I would say that this is such a long shot, but the only way to do it is to try and appeal to someone's like moral side. And even that's not going to work because, like you said, there's people that are, their mixture of bad and good is predominantly bad, right? They're predominantly criminals. Not even, like you said, there are some criminals that probably have some good in them. But if they're majority criminals and that's their game, that's their life that they've lived, is to get over on the other guy by doing stuff that's illegal, you're not going to convince those people. You're not going to be able to make a solid moral argument, right?
Right.
I mean, if you were to persuade me, you might have a chance. You can play on my faith or my belief in the betterment, seeing the good side in everyone, and maybe like I would lay down my arms, but at the same time in the back of my head I'd be like, well, my buddy Dave's packing, so like, I'm still, he would probably still protect me if it got to that, right, type of thing, right? So in other words, a real herd immunity. Like being in northern Idaho, you have like a real herd immunity. Like, I don't have to be, my wife is like, she carries all the time, but it's like, I don't care all the time because who am I going to mess with? Right? This guy rear-ended me, and like we pulled over, he's smoking a cigarette, and after exchanging things, he was very nice, great guy. He's been driving all day, he was tired, he didn't see the construction sign. No big deal. The last thing he says before he goes, thanks for being so nice and not shooting me. Not pulling out, not pulling out a gun. So it's like, okay, this native Idahoan is expecting, for all he knows, an offender bender ending up with some kind of shootout, like at the OK Corral. It's like, okay, if that's the mentality that I'm surrounded by, why do I need to like pack? Right?
So that doesn't sound like the mentality of a native Idahoan, though.
Oh, maybe not. I don't know.
That sounds like the mentality of, somebody that moved up here that has heard all these things about how we're all gun-toting, rootin'-tootin', rustic, will shoot anybody for just being an outsider. That's the kind of shit that goes around, and it's stupid.
Maybe. Like, I guess I'm submitting facts, not into evidence. I mean, he looked and sounded to me like he may be a native, but I don't know that for a fact.
Just because you put on a plaid jacket.
But I'm totally pro Second Amendment. I mean, how do you feel about the NRA? I'm confused about the NRA. Is it worth like even being a member? Like, are they really like, what does the NRA have to say about this? I mean, they should have a position on this. They should be sending their lawyers to defeat this. This is complete nonsense, right?
Yeah, I'm sure they have something to say about it. The last thing that I saw about there's a current lawsuit that has just been started, and actually one of Oregon's county sheriffs is a part of it. Mm-hmm. And it's several different groups that are opposing this bill, and they're trying to get it shut down and stopped. Yeah. But I didn't see anything about the NRA in it.
Because I'm pretty much to the point where it's just like, let anybody carry anything they want anywhere. I'm not, I mean, am I going to get scared if I see some guy open carrying like when I'm on a plane? Like, no. Because that guy's probably, if the guy's got the balls to like do something like that, I don't imagine he's going to pull it out and shoot me. However, the nuts, you know, the psychologically challenged, you know, person in the middle seat, like, you know, a few rows back, he might think twice about doing any crazy stuff if he sees someone with, right?
Yeah, I mean, what you're saying is it equalizes the playing field for everybody. And that's essentially what that saying means is God made man, Sam Colt made him even. So if you've got a plane full of people that are either open or concealed carrying, you know, you don't know who's got a gun. So you may walk on with your gun with ill intentions, but you're probably not going to get very far.
Exactly. So that's why my personal belief and faith is, and this is from someone who's not concealed or open carrying. I have a utility knife. That's it. So it's like, but I completely believe in anybody should be able to carry anything, anywhere. So, I mean, this Oregon law is complete nonsense. And it's not just because you asked the question about it that I could infer that you didn't agree with it either. It's that I, in my own personal beliefs, like totally disagree with that. I think it's now.
Well, even if you didn't, even if you loved it, I'd still be having the conversation with you.
Right. Well, I mean,
talking about like, well, why do you think it's a good idea?
Well, so here's then the topic that you probably would disagree with me, since we're on this, we agree.
Ooh.
But this is the thing, because I wanted to, because you said openly that you believe in the Constitution. And this is part of the reason why you would say, and I would agree with you, if the Constitution is the law of the land, it's the supreme law of the land, and it overrides, or as you said, trumps the state resolution that Oregon's trying to enforce, or doesn't even have the system to enforce, is from what you're telling me.
Yeah.
But if you see, as some, and myself is starting to get down this road, the Constitution as a contract, right? It's actually a contract between the governing body, federal government, and the subjects, or the governed, right? Then, as every contract needs to voluntarily have both parties participate in it and join it, right? So like one of the famous abolitionists, libertarian anarchists, Lysander Spooner, is summarized in some memes. He's just like, I didn't sign shit, right? This contract is null and void on my end, so I don't even have to obey this at all. Yeah. So like, if there's a modern day Spooner in Oregon, he's just like, I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit about what the Constitution says. I don't give a shit what this state resolution says. I'm having a gun, right? And I'm getting a gun any way possible. Your permits be damned. Yeah. Like, you can't tell me what to do with my body and how I choose to protect it, you know? So that's another way that I see it too, is that, you know, that maybe this whole thing in Oregon is going to just become black market, just like the drugs, right? When you try and outlaw drugs. It's so funny that like Oregon, aren't they one of the places that like legalize like every drug?
Just about,
They legalize every drug, but it's like they don't want to legalize like firearms.
Yeah, I think weed's legal there, mushrooms. I don't know if they legalized acid or anything, but yeah, I mean they've legalized a lot of drugs.
Yeah, acid. Interesting you say that. I looked it up because sometimes I can't figure out what to listen to, and so I was like, I'm cleaning the house today. Like, what do I listen to? And I use birthdays. So I have one of the frequently visited sites on my phone. It's like musician birthdays. Today would have been Jimi Hendrix's 80th birthday. So you talk about acid. It's like, what's his thing? Are you experienced?
You want to hear a great story about acid? So on YouTube, look up. It's a Comedy Central series called This Is Not Happening. It's hosted by Ari Shaffir. And so what they do is I think each episode focuses on like a specific topic, like love or hallucinogens or something like that. And so the comedians that are there at the club they film this at, they each go up and they tell a real, true, personal story that's just funny as shit that has to do with whatever that theme is. And so Dan Cummins, his is called Acid, Vegas, and Enya. Mm-hmm. And he gets up there and he tells this story about how him and, I don't know if it's still his agent or whatever, but it was one of his agents at the time. They went to Vegas and they went and stayed at Circus Circus. and they had 9 tabs of acid and made a plan to go pick up some coke and some ecstasy, and yeah, it goes on crazy. From there. But they tried to recreate Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, and it's one of the funniest fucking stories I've ever heard from him.
So when you say 9 tabs of acid, like they each did 9 tabs?
They had 9 total, and they...
How many were there?
9 total, and they...
And how many people were participating?
Him and his agent, so just 2 people.
So just 2 people with 9 tabs of acid.
Yeah, and so they split all 9 between them.
Oh my God, I can't wrap my mind around that. Yeah, because if you've ever done 1 tab of acid,
I've never done acid, but his story, I still can't decide if it makes me want to do it or never want to look at it.
Well, have you done? I mean, I don't know. I think based on what I heard, if I recall, you haven't done psilocybin yet. You haven't done mushrooms.
No.
So, having done both, I would say mushrooms are way better. If for no other reason, the experience or trip is shorter. And as I recall, it's more guaranteed to put what I call perma-smile on you, right? So one of the famous times for me was New Year's Eve party. So I grew up near the Rose Bowl, right? So one of my buddies lived on the border of South Pasadena and Pasadena. In fact, his house was on Orange Grove Avenue, where they line up the parade floats on New Year's Eve, and they're working on them to the last second, right? Until they start the big Rose Parade on New Year's Day, right? So my buddy and I've known since 4th grade, we stumble upon someone at the party who's having to get some shrooms, and so we do the shrooms, and we're out there. And for me, it's just a beautiful, loving experience. I loved looking at these floats. Like everything was just amazing, beautiful, up close, because you can walk up to them, right? Because they're still working on them. They haven't been in the parade yet.
Yeah.
And they're all made of flowers and nature. It's so amazing. And then we bump into our friends and some friend, and he's just like, well, I'm doing well, but I'm not doing as well as JJ. And that's when I realized, like, I just have this huge smile on my face. Like, I'm just like smiling for like no reason. And so I always think of like perma-smile when I think of mushrooms. And I think that I cannot say that I've ever had I had a temporary bad segment of a trip. That's only because one guy in the house, fraternity house I was in, he wanted to be a jerk. He's never done mushrooms. He never even smoked weed. He just drank alcohol. He wanted to be a jerk. It was probably about a week before graduation. I was doing shrooms. I was sitting in this chair listening to Pink Floyd. I was having a great time because the guy who was the bass player in our band, he had this perfect setup, this comfortable like leather chair, and I was just having a great time. And this guy, this jerk, picks up one of the earphones and says like, "Your parents are coming right now." And I'm
what
just
a
like,
dick.
What? My parents are coming right now. Not realizing my parents are 3,000 miles away, not scheduled to be out for like another week. So I'm going through the fraternity house, and of course my buddy, the drummer of the band, just grabs me by the shoulder. He goes like, "Dude, get a little grip. Your parents aren't coming. They're a week out. Go back to like enjoying your trip." I'm like, "Oh, thank you." But that was the only brief period that I can remember ever having a bad trip on mushrooms. On acid, it's just like this movie is like 3 hours long. Like, you can enjoy. Have you ever like seen a movie that you've enjoyed for like maybe the first half or maybe 2/3, and then you're just like, oh, now this movie's become long.
Yeah, you're just not into it anymore.
That's what the difference between mushrooms and acid. Is that like you're just like, okay, I know what acid's like now. Can this please be over?
Yeah. That's what I've heard too. It just goes on too fucking long.
That's the problem. And if you're splitting 9 tabs, I have no idea how long that would go on.
It's a great story, dude. Yeah. You got to look it up. It's funny.
Yeah. Yeah. You told me that he did one of his podcasts completely on acid too, right? And he was just trying to read when he was on acid.
Yeah. His 300th episode, he did on acid, and he took 2. And like 56 minutes in is where it starts to hit him, and he's kind of having trouble, and he's sweating, and he like unbuttons his shirt, and he's just sitting there, and he powers through for like another 20 minutes, half an hour, and then he just has to stop. He just stops in mid-sentence, and he's telling his producer that,
we're done.
Yeah, he's like, I can't do it. Yeah. I can't read.
Yeah.
And his producer's like, no, come on, you're good. You can do this. And he's like, no, seriously, the words won't hold their shape, and the screen is melting. I can't do it.
Yep.
And so it just cuts to him the next day. And he's like, all right, let's try this again.
Yeah.
And apparently he, from there, he had his wife take him home and proceeded to trip balls in a chair in the backyard, staring at the sky for another 10 hours.
And that's the good thing. You can be entertained doing nothing, right?
Yeah.
So you can just sit in a chair and stare at nothing for like 10 hours, right? So
I don't have 10 hours.
Yeah. Well, so that's the thing. So if you're going to do, I mean, again, I would say shrooms is good because shrooms is probably about 6 hours. So it's like, you could, I would say it's always better to be, I mean, I always liked being outside and in nature, it was great. And for some reason I had this like great rap.
Yeah. I know a guy who does them out camping.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we go camping and he'll do them. Yeah. And yes, permanent smile and just
one of the best contexts to do it.
He's a fucking hoot.
Yeah. You just love being in nature. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you can tell jokes that are like like I remember laughing for half an hour at the why does a dog lick its balls joke? And, I mean, we just told that joke and we're just laughing.
Because it can.
Exactly. And other people are just looking at us going like, why the hell are you still laughing at that? I guess you have to be on the substance to understand us, right? And sometimes we'd go out drinking and people would be like, and we could be just drinking like what, I don't know, water, but it looks like something they don't know. And so people at other tables are being like, that table's having a great time. Like, what are they drinking? We want the same thing they're drinking. It's like, well, sorry to tell you. Drinking the good water. Sorry to tell you, it's not in the beverage, right? So don't expect to have as good of a time as we're having.
Well, we're about out of time. So,
all right, well, thanks, man.
To end with joke and lawyers. What's 3 feet long and wrapped around an asshole?
What's 3 feet long and wrapped around an asshole? I give up.
A lawyer's necktie.
Oh, nice. Well, my favorite one is like, you have when you got 12 lawyers buried up to their neck in sand.
What?
Not enough sand.
What's the difference between a lawyer and a prostitute?
Ooh, that's a tough one. Not much.
A prostitute will stop fucking you when you're dead.
Oh, that's pain. Yeah, the lawyers, they get all the jokes.
They sure do.
Yeah. Well, thanks, man.
Yeah.
It's been fun. Time flies when you're having fun.
It sure does. Yeah, thanks for coming back, man.
All right. Talk to you later.
All right. Have a good one.